Hey guys, tonight we begin with the scorching, back-breaking, and surprisingly deadly world of ancient Egypt. The civilization that gave us pyramids, hieroglyphs, and a cultural obsession with cats, and the afterlife that makes modern funeral practices look casual by comparison. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from and what time it is for you. It is always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Welcome to ancient Egypt, land of pyramids, gods, and relentless ultraviolet violence. Before you even open your eyes, the sun is already blasting through your reed hut, like it is auditioning for the role of unforgiving sky god, which, coincidentally, it is. Rai doesn't take days off. There are no curtains, no shades, and certainly no air conditioning. Just the raw, unfiltered heat of the desert, baking everything, including you, by breakfast. You are lying on a mat woven from reeds, with a headrest that is essentially a curved piece of wood designed to keep your neck at an angle that chiropractors 4,000 years later would call criminal. The headrest isn't for comfort. It is to keep scorpions out of your hair while you sleep. Let that sink in. Your pillow is a weapons defense system. You are not resting your head. You are elevating it above the danger zone, where things with stingers patrol your bedroom floor looking for warm hiding spots. The Nile breeze you were promised in all those travel documentaries? Yeah, that is gone. Probably died. Sometime around 2800 BC. By the time you stumble outside, the temperature is already flirting with 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Around 32 degrees Celsius, if you prefer your suffering in metric. And it is not even mid-morning yet. You are wearing a linen kilt if you are a man, a simple linen dress if you are a woman, and absolutely nothing underneath, because underwear won't be invented for another couple thousand years, and also because wearing extra layers in this heat would be suicide. The linen is thin, almost transparent, and provides roughly the same sun protection as a sheet of tissue paper. Your skin is already dark from constant sun exposure, not tanned in the attractive modern sense, burned, weathered, aged beyond your years. You are 25 years old, which in ancient Egypt means you are middle-aged, and your skin looks like leather that has been left in the sun too long, which it has, every single day, for your entire life. The sun doesn't just shine in ancient Egypt, it attacks. It is aggressive, personal, and relentless. There is no escape except going inside your mud, brick house, which is only marginally cooler than standing in an oven. The walls are thick, which helps, but thick walls in a desert climate mean you are choosing between baking slowly or baking medium. Let's talk about your house, since you are going to spend a lot of time wishing you were anywhere else. If you are a peasant, and statistically you absolutely are, your house is made of mud bricks, not fired bricks, not kiln, dried bricks. Mud mixed with straw, shaped into blocks, and left in the sun to dry. These bricks are surprisingly effective at insulation, keeping the interior cooler during the day and warmer at night. But they're also fragile, prone to damage from rain, which doesn't happen often, but when it does, parts of your house just dissolve. Imagine your walls melting. That is a possibility you live with. The floor is packed earth, not tile, not stone, just dirt that has been walked on so many times it is compressed into a hard surface. Sweep it all you want, it is still dirt. You track it everywhere. It gets in your food. It gets in your bed, it gets in your lungs. Ancient Egyptians had chronic respiratory problems, and living in dirt houses, while working in dusty conditions, explains why. Your roof is made of palm fronds, reeds, or wooden beams covered with mud. It provides shade, which is critical, but it also means you are living under what is essentially a thatched roof in a civilization that uses open flames for cooking and lighting. House fires happen, they happen regularly. And when they do, your home goes up like kindler. There are no windows with glass. Glass exists, but it is rare and expensive. Your windows are openings in the wall, maybe covered with reed mats that you can roll up or down. This means you choose between having light and airflow, or having privacy and protection from wind-blown sand. You can't have both. Sand gets everywhere. This isn't beach sand. This is desert sand. Fine particles that infiltrate every crack, every container, every piece of clothing. You eat sand with your meals. You sleep with sand in your bed. You breathe sand. It wears down your teeth, which we'll get to later, and it never, ever stops coming. Now let's talk about your morning routine, which starts earlier than you'd like because the sun is up and therefore you are up. Sleep schedules follow the sun because candles and oil lamps are expensive, and you are not wasting precious resources just to stay up late doing nothing. You wake up thirsty. You are always thirsty. The dry heat sucks moisture from your body constantly. You need water, but water safety is a gamble. The Nile is your water source, and the Nile is also where people bathe, where animals drink, where waste gets dumped, and where crocodiles hunt. Crocodiles are not decorative. They're not symbolic. They're very real, very large, and very interested in anything that enters the water. You approach the Nile carefully, watching for movement, looking for the telltale ripples that means something with teeth is nearby. Fetching water is genuinely dangerous. The water you collect is murky. The Nile carries silt, which makes it nutrient, rich for farming and questionable for drinking. You let it settle in clay jars and the sediment sinks to the bottom, leaving slightly clearer water on top. Slightly. It is still not what anyone would call clean. Boiling water isn't standard practice. You don't understand germ theory. You don't know that invisible organisms in the water can make you sick. You just know that sometimes people get stomach problems, diarrhea, fevers, and sometimes they die. You accept this as normal because everyone deals with it. Parasites are everywhere. Schistosomiasis, caused by parasitic worms in the Nile, infects a huge percentage of the population. The worms enter through your skin when you wade in the water. They live in your blood vessels. They damage your organs. They cause chronic illness that lasts your entire life. You don't know you have parasites. You just know you are tired all the time. You sometimes see blood in your urine and your stomach hurts. This is normal. Everyone feels like this. You work through it because you have no choice. After drinking questionable water, you eat breakfast, which is bread. Bread for breakfast, bread for lunch, bread for dinner. Bread is the foundation of the Egyptian diet, and it is also slowly destroying your teeth. Egyptian bread is made from emmer wheat or barley, ground into flour using stone mills. The grinding process is done by hand, pushing grain across stone surfaces, and tiny particles of stone end up in the flour. You are eating bread with stone dust in it, every meal, every day, for your entire life. This stone dust wears down your teeth at an alarming rate. By age 30, your teeth are ground flat. By age 40, if you live that long, you are missing teeth and dealing with abscesses. Dental infections kill people regularly because there is no treatment except pulling the tooth, and pulling teeth without anesthesia or sterile tools often makes things worse. The bread itself is coarse, dense, and not particularly flavorful. You dip it in beer, which is more like liquid bread than modern beer. It is thick, nutritious, slightly alcoholic, and safer to drink than water, because the brewing process kills some bacteria. Everyone drinks beer. Children drink beer. Beer is breakfast. You eat your bread and beer sitting on the floor or on a low stool, because chairs are for the wealthy. Furniture is minimal. You own a sleeping mat, maybe a wooden headrest, some clay jars for storage, and that is about it. Possessions are few because you are poor, and everything is expensive. After breakfast, you go to work. And work in ancient Egypt is brutal, in ways that would violate every modern labour law ever written. If you are a farmer, which is the most common occupation, you work the fields during the growing season, which is hot, dusty, and backbreaking. You are bent over for hours planting, weeding, harvesting, using tools that are basically sticks with metal or stone attached. Your back is in constant pain. Your hands are calloused and cracked. You age rapidly from physical labour. The Nile floods annually, which is why Egypt is farmable at all. The flood deposits rich silt that makes the soil fertile. But the timing of the flood determines whether you eat this year or not. Too much flood, and your village is underwater. Too little flood, and there is drought and famine. You have no control over this. Your life depends on the river doing what it is supposed to do. During the flood season, when the fields are underwater, you don't get a vacation. You get conscripted for public works projects, building pyramids, temples, monuments, whatever the pharaoh has decided needs building. This is compulsory labour. You don't get paid, you get fed, barely, and you work until the project is done or you die. Working on pyramid construction means moving massive stone blocks using ropes, wooden sledges, and human muscle. No machines. No pulleys beyond basic rope systems. Just you and thousands of other men pulling multi-ton stones up ramps in the blazing sun. The work is dangerous. People die from accidents. Stones fall. Ropes break. Ramps collapse. Heat stroke kills workers regularly. Dehydration is constant. You are given water and beer, but it is never enough. You are always thirsty, always exhausted, always one mistake away from being crushed. If you are a craftsman, your work is slightly less physically brutal, but comes with other problems. Potters, weavers, carpenters, metalworkers, all of them work long hours in workshops that are hot, poorly ventilated, and filled with hazards. Metalworkers breathe toxic fumes from smelting copper and bronze. The smoke damages their lungs. They develop chronic coughs, respiratory problems, and die young. But metal is valuable, and metal workers are needed, so they keep working until they can't anymore. Stone carvers spend their days chipping away at granite and limestone, creating the hieroglyphs and reliefs that will last forever. The stone dust coats their lungs. Silicosis is common. Breathing becomes difficult. They cough blood. They die gasping for air, their lungs destroyed by the very monuments they created. Weavers work indoors, which sounds better until you realize that weaving workshops are dark, cramped, and require sitting in uncomfortable positions for hours. Back problems, eye strain from working in dim light, repetitive stress injuries, all common among weavers. Women do much of the weaving, along with grinding grain, making bread, brewing beer, and raising children. The workload is constant. There are no labor-saving devices. Everything is done by hand. Grinding grain alone takes hours every day, kneeling in front of a grinding stone, pushing grain back and forth until your arms shake and your back screams. Children start working young. By age 5 or 6, you are helping with basic tasks. By age 10, you are doing adult work. Childhood as a protected period of play and education is a concept that doesn't exist for common people. You work because the family needs every person contributing to survive. Now let's talk about hygiene, or the lack thereof, because ancient Egypt had interesting ideas about cleanliness that ranged from surprisingly advanced to absolutely horrifying. Egyptians valued cleanliness more than many ancient cultures. They bathed regularly, or at least the wealthy did. They used natron, a naturally occurring salt, as soap. They shaved their body hair to reduce lice and fleas. They used deodorants made from scented oils and resins. But here is the thing. You are bathing in the Nile, the same Nile that contains crocodiles, parasites, and the waste from everyone upstream. You are washing yourself in what is essentially a very large, very dangerous bathtub that thousands of people and animals are using simultaneously. Public bathing areas exist, but privacy doesn't. You bathe in full view of anyone nearby. Modesty is less of a concern than getting clean. You wade into the water. You scrub using natron or just sand, and you hope nothing with teeth takes an interest in you. Soap made from natron works, but it is harsh. It strips oil from your skin, leaving you dry and cracked in the desert climate. You combat this with oils. Castor oil, moringa oil, various plant-based oils that you rub into your skin to prevent it from becoming leather. Rich people have servants to apply their oils and cosmetics. Poor people do it themselves, using whatever they can afford or make. The oils help, but they also attract dust and sand. So you are constantly fighting a losing battle between being too dry and being coated in grit. Hair is a problem. Head lice are universal. Everyone has lice. Rich people shave their heads and wear wigs. Poor people just deal with the itching. You pick lice out of your children's hair, crush them between your fingernails, and accept that tomorrow there will be more lice. Wigs are made from human hair, sheep's wool, or plant fibers. They're hot, uncomfortable, and they also get lice. But they're a status symbol, and the wealthy wear elaborate wigs, styled with beeswax and resin, creating structures that must be heavy, sweaty, and absolutely crawling with insects. Makeup is worn by both men and women, and it is not just decorative. Kohl, the black eye makeup that is iconic in Egyptian art, is made from galena, a lead-based mineral. You are literally applying lead to your face, daily around your eyes. This cannot be healthy, and it isn't, but it also has practical benefits. The dark kohl reduces glare from the sun. It protects against eye infections, possibly because the lead compounds kill bacteria. Whether the benefit outweighs the lead poisoning is debatable, but Egyptians use it anyway because everyone uses it and it seems to help. Green eye makeup is made from malachite, a copper-based mineral. Again, you are applying metal compounds to your face. Again, there are possible antibacterial benefits. Again, you are also potentially poisoning yourself, but slowly enough that you don't notice. Teeth cleaning involves chewing sticks. You take a twig, fray one end by chewing it, and use it to scrub your teeth. This actually works reasonably well for removing food particles. But remember, your teeth are already being ground down by stone dust in your bread, so cleaning them is fighting a losing battle against geological erosion. Bad breath is a constant problem. The combination of poor dental health, limited diet, and general lack of effective oral hygiene means everyone's breath is terrible. Egyptians try to combat this with breath fresheners made from myrrh, frankincense, and honey mixed with spices. These help mask the smell, but don't address the underlying rot. Dental abscesses are common, painful, and often fatal. An infected tooth can spread bacteria into your jaw, your blood, your brain. People die from tooth infections regularly. There are some attempts at dentistry, drilling into abscessed teeth to drain infection, but without anesthesia or antibiotics. The treatment is almost as dangerous as the problem. Now let's talk about the toilet situation, which is exactly as bad as you are imagining, and possibly worse. There are no toilets in the modern sense. The wealthy have seats with holes that drain into sandpits. The poor have designated areas outside, communal spots where everyone goes. Privacy is minimal. Dignity is optional. Toilet paper doesn't exist. You use your hand, specifically your left hand, which is why the left hand is considered unclean, and you never eat or greet someone with it. After using your hand, you wash it with water and maybe sand. How well this works depends on how much water you have available and how thorough you are. Flies are everywhere. They breed in the waste pits. They land on your food. They crawl on your face. Fly-borne diseases spread easily. Dysentery, typhoid, cholera, all transmitted by flies that went from waste to food to your mouth. Ancient Egyptians tried to control flies by covering food using fly whisks and keeping animals that eat flies like frogs and birds. But it is a losing battle. There are too many flies, too many breeding grounds, and no understanding of how disease transmission works. Chamber pots are used at night, clay vessels that you urinate into and then empty in the morning. The smell in your house overnight is not pleasant. The pot gets emptied into the street, the river, or a waste pit, spreading that pleasant aroma to the entire neighborhood. In cities, waste management is a serious problem. Streets have open sewage channels. Waste flows through the city, or is supposed to flow. Often it just accumulates, creating disease-breeding pools of filth that everyone walks through on their way to everywhere. Rural areas have it slightly better. You can designate a spot away from the house, let nature decompose the waste, and avoid the worst of the urban stench. But you are still dealing with flies, parasites, and the general unpleasantness of no sanitation infrastructure. Menstruation is handled with linen pads that are washed and reused. Washing menstrual cloths in the Nile alongside everything else means you are mixing blood into the water system. This doesn't help with the parasite or disease situation. Women who can afford it have designated menstruation huts, small structures where they stay during their period, isolated from the rest of the community. This is presented as protecting the sacred from contamination, but it also means spending several days a month in a hot, cramped hut with minimal supplies. Childbirth is dangerous and happens at home with a midwife attending. There is no pain relief beyond perhaps some beer or wine. There is no understanding of infection control. There are no emergency interventions if something goes wrong. Maternal mortality is high. Infant mortality is horrifying. Roughly half of children die before age 5. Disease, malnutrition, accidents, infections, all of it combining to create a childhood survival rate that would be unthinkable today. Women who survive childbirth often have complications, fistulas, prolapse, chronic pain, all untreated and unmanageable. You just live with it because there is no alternative. You have more children because that is expected. And each pregnancy is another roll of the dice with your life. Medical care exists, but it is a mixture of genuine observation, religious ritual, and complete guesswork. Egyptian physicians are renowned in the ancient world, and some of their practices are surprisingly effective. Others are nonsense that ranges from useless to actively harmful. Broken bones are set with splints and bandages. This works. Egyptians understand that immobilizing a broken limb helps it heal. They're good at this. Mummies show evidence of healed fractures, proving that bone setting was practiced successfully. Wounds are cleaned and bandaged with honey, which actually has antibacterial properties. Whether Egyptians know why honey works or just observe that it does is unclear, but they use it, and it helps prevent infection. Surgery is attempted for some conditions. There is evidence of skull trepanation, drilling holes in the skull to relieve pressure or release evil spirits. depending on who you ask. Some patients survive this, many don't. It is difficult to say whether the surgery helps or just creates a new problem, but Egyptian medicine also includes spells, amulets, and treatments that make no medical sense. Eating excrement is prescribed for some ailments. Using rotting meat as a poultice is recommended for infections. Drinking urine is suggested for various problems. The theory is that diseases are caused by evil spirits, curses, or imbalances in the body. Treatment addresses these supposed causes through a combination of physical intervention and magical protection. You get medicine and a spell. Whether you recover depends on luck, your immune system, and whether the disease was survivable in the first place. Physicians are expensive, most people can't afford them. You rely on home remedies, local healers, and prayers to the gods. You offer sacrifices at temples, hoping the gods will cure you. You wear amulets to ward off disease. You do everything except address the actual medical problem because you don't know what the actual problem is. Life expectancy is around 30 to 35 years if you survive childhood. This doesn't mean everyone dies at 30. It means so many children die that they drag down the average. If you make it to adulthood, you might live to 50 or 60, but you'll be elderly by 40, worn out by labour, disease, and environmental stress. Now let's talk about food in more detail. Because while bread and beer are the staples, there is more to Egyptian diet than carbohydrates and alcohol, though not much more if you are poor. Vegetables are available if you can grow them or afford them. Onions, garlic, leeks, lettuce, cucumbers, radishes. These are eaten raw, cooked, or pickled. They provide some vitamins and fibre in an otherwise grain-heavy diet. Onions and garlic are so common that they're used as payment for workers. The pyramid builders are paid partly in onions. This sounds ridiculous until you realise that onions are nutritious, keep relatively well, and add flavour to otherwise bland food. Legumes like lentils, chickpeas, and fava beans provide protein. They're boiled into stews or mashed into paste. They're filling and nutritious, and they're a major part of the diet for people who can't afford meat regularly. Meat is a luxury. You eat meat when an animal is slaughtered for a festival, a sacrifice, or because it is old and no longer useful for work. Beef, goat, mutton, duck, goose, all of these are eaten, but infrequently by common people. Fish is more accessible. The Nile is full of fish, and fishing is a common occupation. Fish are caught, gutted, dried, or salted, and eaten as protein sources. But fish spoil quickly in the heat. So, unless you live near the river and eat them fresh, you are eating preserved fish that is salty, tough, and not particularly appetizing. Pork is controversial. Some people eat it. Some avoid it for religious or cultural reasons. There is evidence of both pork consumption and pork prohibition in different periods and regions. Whether you eat pig depends on when and where you live and what the current religious authorities say about it. Honey is the only sweetener. Sugar doesn't exist yet. If you want something sweet, you use honey, which is expensive and primarily available to the wealthy. Poor people's diets are not sweet. They're bland, repetitive, and largely flavourless except for onions and garlic. Fruit is seasonal and limited. Dates, figs, grapes, pomegranates, and melons are grown and eaten when available. Dates are particularly important because they're sweet, filling, and can be dried for storage. A handful of dates might be your dessert, your snack, and your special treat, all in one. Beer is consumed constantly. It is nutritious, providing calories and B vitamins. It is safer than water. It is mildly alcoholic enough to make the daily grind slightly more bearable, without being intoxicating. You drink beer for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Children drink wheat beer. Everyone drinks beer. Wine is for the wealthy. It is made from grapes, stored in jars, and consumed at feasts and celebrations. Poor people rarely taste wine. You know it exists. You know the rich drink it, and you drink your beer, and don't complain, because complaining changes nothing. Cooking is done over open fires, or in clay ovens. Temperature control is difficult. You burn things regularly. You undercook things regularly. Food safety is a gamble. Meat is sometimes spoiled before you cook it, but you cook it anyway, because wasting food is not an option. Food storage is primitive. You have clay jars for grains and liquids. You have baskets for vegetables. You have nothing refrigerated. In the heat, food spoils quickly. You eat things that modern people would throw away without question. You get sick, you recover, or you don't. Meals are eaten with your hands. Utensils are minimal. You scoop stew with bread. You grab vegetables with your fingers. You drink from shared cups. Hygiene around mealtime is limited to maybe rinsing your hands, if water is available. Hunger is common. Harvests vary. Distribution is unequal. The wealthy eat well. The poor eat enough to survive, usually except when they don't. Famine happens. Droughts happen. When food is scarce, the poor starve while the rich ration their luxuries. Malnutrition is widespread. You are not getting a balanced diet. You are getting carbohydrates, some protein if you are lucky, minimal vitamins, and not enough of anything. Stunted growth, weakness, susceptibility to disease, all result from chronic malnutrition that you experience your entire life. Now let's talk about social hierarchy, because Egyptian society is rigidly stratified in ways that determine every aspect of your life, from birth to death. At the top is the pharaoh, who is not just a king but a living god. The pharaoh owns everything: the land, the resources, the people. You exist to serve the pharaoh, and questioning this is not just treasonous, it is blasphemous. Below the pharaoh are nobles and priests. These are the educated class, the administrators, the people who read and write hieroglyphs, who manage the bureaucracy, who communicate with the gods. They live in relative luxury, eat well, have servants, and rarely do physical labor. Scribes are highly valued because literacy is rare and essential for running an empire. If you can read and write, you have job security and social mobility. But becoming a scribe requires education, which requires resources, which means you need to be born into a family that can afford to send you to school instead of putting you to work in the fields. Craftsmen and merchants occupy a middle tier. They're more valuable than farmers because their skills are specialized. They're still subject to taxes, corvée labor, and the whims of authority, but they have slightly more security than peasants. Farmers and laborers are the vast majority. You work the land, you pay taxes, you serve when called, and you have minimal rights or protections. You are valuable for your labor, but you are replaceable. There are always more peasants. Slaves exist, though slavery in Egypt is different from later historical slavery in some ways. War captives, criminals, and debtors can be enslaved. They're property. They have no rights, and they do the worst jobs under the worst conditions. Women's status depends entirely on their class. Rich women have more freedom and power than poor men. They can own property, conduct business, and inherit wealth. But they're still second to men in legal and social status. Poor women work as hard as poor men, grinding grain, making bread, raising children, weaving, and doing agricultural labor. They're not protected from hard work by their gender. They're just expected to do hard work while also bearing and raising children. Social mobility is limited. You are born into a class, and you likely die in that class. Exceptional talent, particularly literacy, can elevate you. Marriage can change status, especially for women, but most people live and die in the same social position as their parents. The pharaoh demands taxes, which are paid in grain, goods, or labor. Tax collectors are feared and hated. They assess what you owe, and you pay it, or you face punishment. The tax rate can be arbitrary, adjusted based on the harvest, the pharaoh's building projects, or military campaigns. You have no say in how you are governed. There is no democracy, no representation, no rights. The pharaoh's word is law, enforced by officials who have their own authority and very little oversight. Corruption is common. Justice is inconsistent. Punishment for crimes is harsh. Beatings are standard for minor offences. Mutilation of hands or ears is used for theft or fraud. Execution happens for serious crimes, or just for annoying the wrong official. There is no trial by jury, no presumption of innocence, just the judgment of whoever has authority. Let's talk about religion, which isn't separate from daily life, but integrated into everything you do. And it comes with requirements that are expensive, time-consuming, and non-negotiable. The gods control everything. The Nile floods because the gods will it. Crops grow because the gods permit it. You are alive because the gods haven't killed you yet. This belief system means you spend significant time and resources appeasing deities who might decide to destroy you on a whim. Temples are everywhere, and they're not just for worship, they're economic centers, owning land, employing workers, collecting offerings. The temple of a major god like Amun at Karnak is a massive complex with thousands of priests, servants, and dependents. You are expected to make offerings. Food, beer, linen, whatever you can afford. These offerings feed the priests and maintain the temple, which supposedly maintains Marat, the cosmic order. If you don't contribute, you are not just cheap, you are risking universal chaos. Festivals are frequent. Religious calendars have dozens of feast days, each requiring celebration, offerings, and often work stoppage. This sounds like vacation, until you realize you are not getting paid for time off, and you are expected to spend money on offerings and feast foods you can barely afford. The cult of the dead dominates Egyptian culture. You spend your life preparing for death, saving money for burial, commissioning grave goods, arranging for offerings to continue after you die. The afterlife is more important than life, which explains the massive investment in tombs and mummies. Mummification is expensive. The full process, removing organs, drying the body with natron, wrapping in linen, placing in decorated coffins. All of this costs more than most people earn in a lifetime. The wealthy get elaborate mummification. The poor get wrapped in a mat and buried in the sand. Your eternal survival depends on your burial. If your body decays, if your name is forgotten, if offerings stop, you die a second death and cease to exist. This belief creates massive anxiety and drives the entire funerary industry. Tomb robbery is common because tombs are filled with valuables meant to supply the deceased in the afterlife. Robbers break in, steal everything, and sometimes destroy mummies in the process. This condemns the deceased to non-existence, which is the worst fate imaginable. The government tries to stop tomb robbery with curses, guards, and harsh punishments, but the lure of gold is too strong. Tomb robbers know the risks and do it anyway, because stealing from one rich person's grave can feed your family for years. Magic is real to Egyptians. Curses work, spells have power, amulets provide protection. You wear protective jewelry, say prayers, follow rituals, all to defend against magical threats that you genuinely believe are trying to harm you. Evil spirits cause disease, accidents, and misfortune. You protect yourself with amulets bearing the names of gods, images of protective deities, hieroglyphic spells. Whether these work is irrelevant, you believe they work, and not wearing them is unthinkable. Dreams are messages from gods or spirits. You pay attention to dreams, interpret them, act on them. Bad dreams require cleansing rituals. Prophetic dreams might guide your decisions. Dream interpretation is a recognized skill, and experts are consulted for troubling visions. Death is everywhere. Children die constantly. Women die in childbirth. Men die from accidents, disease, violence. Old age is rare enough to be remarkable. You live with death as a constant presence, and it shapes how you think about everything. Grief is expressed but brief. You mourn the dead with ritual wailing, tearing your clothes, throwing dust on your head. Then you move on because you have to. There is work to do. Life continues, and dwelling on loss doesn't bring anyone back. Let's talk about the animals you live with, because ancient Egypt is full of creatures that range from useful to annoying to actively trying to kill you. Cats are sacred to the goddess Baste, which means killing a cat, even accidentally, can get you executed. But cats are also practical. They kill rats and mice that eat your grain stores. You tolerate cats, feed them scraps, and let them live in your house, because the alternative is losing your food supply to rodents. Sacred doesn't mean pampered for most cats. Temple cats are fed and cared for, sometimes mummified when they die. Street cats are skinny, feral, and survive on whatever they can catch. You respect them because they're sacred, but you are not necessarily petting them or treating them like modern house cats. Dogs are working animals. They guard homes, help with hunting, and eat garbage, which provides crude waste management. Egyptian dogs are lean, tough, and not particularly friendly. They're tools, not companions, though wealthy people might keep dogs as status symbols and actual pets. Cattle are valuable. Oxen pull plows. Cows provide milk, leather, and eventually meat. You don't own cattle unless you are relatively wealthy. Most farmers work land owned by temples or nobles, using borrowed oxen and paying for the privilege with a share of the harvest. Donkeys are the main transport animal. They carry loads, pull carts, and are tough enough to survive on minimal food and water. Donkeys are beaten regularly because that is how you make them work. Animal welfare isn't a concern. Efficiency is the only consideration. Goats and sheep provide wool, milk, meat, and leather. They are herded by children and the poor. Goats are destructive, eating anything they can reach. Sheep are somewhat better behaved. Both animals smell terrible, especially in the heat. Pigs are controversial, as mentioned, but where they're raised, they're filthy animals that root through garbage and eat waste. This makes them useful for waste disposal, but also makes them ritually unclean to some religious authorities. The status of pigs varies by region and time period. Chickens are kept for eggs and meat. They're relatively easy to maintain, eating insects and kitchen scraps. But they also attract predators like snakes, jackals, and wildcats. Keeping chickens means constantly defending them from everything that wants to eat them. Geese and ducks are raised in large numbers, especially by temples and wealthy estates. They're fattened for meat, and their liver is considered delicacy. Poor people eat duck or goose only during festivals, when temples distribute sacrificial meat to the public. Crocodiles are both feared and revered. Some regions worship crocodiles, keeping sacred crocodiles in temple pools, feeding them, even decorating them with jewelry. Other regions hunt and kill crocodiles for their skin and to reduce danger. Your attitude toward crocodiles depends entirely on local religious practice. Hippos are more dangerous than crocodiles. They're aggressive, territorial, and capable of biting a person in half. Hippos destroy boats, attack swimmers, and rampage through fields, eating crops. They're hunted by wealthy nobles as sport and by everyone else as pest control. Snakes are everywhere. Cobras, vipers, and other venomous species live in the desert, in the fields, and sometimes in your house. You check your shoes before putting them on. You watch where you step. You teach your children to recognize dangerous snakes and avoid them. Snake bites kill people regularly. There are treatments, mostly magical spells and herbal poultices, that don't work. If the snake wasn't too venomous, you might survive. If it was a cobra or viper, you probably die painfully over several hours or days. Scorpions hide in dark places, under rocks, in wood piles, in your bedding. Their stings are painful and potentially fatal, especially to children. You develop a habit of shaking out clothing and checking before reaching into dark spaces. Spiders are less dangerous, but still unpleasant. Large spiders live in houses, eating insects. You tolerate them because they eat mosquitoes and flies. You don't tolerate them in your sleeping area because waking up with a spider on your face is universally horrible. Mosquitoes carry malaria, though you don't know that. You just know that mosquitoes are annoying. Their bites itch, and sometimes after mosquito season people get fevers and die. The connection isn't understood, so there is no effective prevention. Flies are the worst. They're everywhere, constantly. They land on your food, your face, your injuries. They spread disease, lay eggs in wounds, and generally make life miserable. The fly whisk is an essential tool and also a status symbol. Rich people have servants whose only job is standing nearby, waving fly whisks. Locusts swarm occasionally, destroying entire harvests in days. When locusts come, there is nothing you can do except watch your food supply disappear and prepare for famine. You might catch and eat the locusts themselves, which are edible, but they don't replace the lost crops. Frogs appear in huge numbers when the Nile floods. They're everywhere, hopping through your house, getting underfoot, making noise all night. Frogs are associated with fertility and rebirth, so killing them is discouraged. You just live with thousands of frogs for a few weeks until the flood recedes. Rats and mice eat stored grain. They contaminate food with droppings and urine. They chew through baskets and clay jars. They're the reason you need cats. Granaries use raised platforms, sealed containers, and every possible method to keep rodents out. But they always find a way in. Beetles of various types live in your grain stores. Some are harmless. Others destroy food. The sacred scarab beetle, revered for religious reasons, is actually a dung beetle that rolls animal feces into balls and lays eggs in them. The Egyptians see this behavior as symbolic of the sun's journey across the sky. You see it as another insect to deal with. Bats live in ruins, caves, and sometimes roofs. They eat insects, which is helpful. They also leave droppings that smell terrible and can carry disease. You tolerate bats for pest control, but don't want them nesting directly above where you sleep. Monkeys are kept as pets by the wealthy and as trained helpers by some entertainers. They're clever, mischievous, and frequently bite their owners. Pet monkeys are a status symbol that proves you have enough wealth to feed an animal that provides no practical benefit. Birds are everywhere. Some are good omens, others are bad omens. Some are hunted for food, others are sacred and protected. You need to know which is which, and the rules vary by region and deity. Accidentally killing the wrong bird can result in serious religious consequences. Now let's talk about the Nile flood in more detail, because your entire life revolves around this annual event that you can't control, can't predict accurately, and can't survive without. The flood comes every year around June or July, caused by monsoon rains in the Ethiopian highlands, which you don't know about because you don't know Ethiopia exists. You just know that every year the river rises, and your life depends on it rising the right amount. Too little flood means low water, insufficient silt deposition, poor crop yields, and famine. Too much flood means villages destroyed, livestock drowned, infrastructure washed away, and famine for different reasons. There is a narrow optimal range, and whether you hit it is entirely up to the gods and luck. The Nile's level is measured using nilometers, stone structures with markings that show water height. Priests read the nilometer and announce whether the flood is good, bad, or catastrophic. This information determines tax rates, food distribution, and whether everyone panics. When the flood is low, the pharaoh is blamed. Clearly he has shutula divine favour, failed to maintain Marat, angered the gods. Low floods can cause political instability, rebellion, and regime change. The pharaoh's legitimacy is literally measured by the river's water level. High floods are equally problematic. Your village might be built on high ground, or it might be underwater. If you are underwater, you evacuate to temporary camps on higher ground, taking whatever you can carry and leaving everything else to be destroyed or washed away. Houses that flood are often total losses. Mud brick dissolves in water. Stored food is ruined. Possessions are destroyed. You spend weeks or months rebuilding using resources you don't have, going into debt that will take years to repay. During the flood, the fields are underwater for 3 to 4 months. This is Akhet, the inundation season. You can't farm, so you are conscripted for building projects, maintenance work, or military campaigns. The pharaoh owns your labour when the fields are flooded. When the water recedes, it leaves behind rich silt, the black earth that makes Egypt farmable. This is Peret, the growing season. You plough the muddy fields, plant seeds, and pray that the crop grows before the water runs out. Ploughing means guiding an ox, drawn plough through heavy, muddy soil. The plough is a simple wooden tool, barely more than a sharp stick. It doesn't turn the soil, just cuts furrows. You are walking behind an ox, in mud, under the sun, for hours every day. Planting means walking the rows, dropping seeds, covering them. Birds try to eat the seeds before they germinate. You scare them off, use nets, set traps. Some loss is inevitable. You plant extra to account for birds, insects, and bad luck. Irrigation is critical because the Nile's water doesn't reach all fields. You dig channels, build simple dams, use shaduf devices, basically a bucket on a counterweight pole, to lift water from canals into higher fields. It is labour-intensive and never-ending. Weeding is constant. Weeds grow faster than crops. You pull them by hand, bent over in the field, in the heat. Your back aches. Your hands are raw. But if you don't weed, the crops fail, and failure means starvation. As crops grow, you guard against pests. Locusts, birds, rats. Everything wants to eat your grain before you can harvest it. You patrol the fields, chase away animals, pray to gods for protection. Your crop's survival is a daily battle. Harvest is Shemu, the dry season. The grain is ready, and you have a narrow window to cut it, thresh it, and store it before it spoils or is eaten. Everyone works harvest. Children, women, elderly, everyone capable of using a sickle is in the fields. Cutting grain means using a sickle, a curved blade, to saw through stalks. You grab bundles of grain, cut them, lay them aside. You are bent over, moving fast, because the harvest can't wait. Speed matters more than comfort. Threshing separates grain from stalks. You drive animals over the cut grain, their hooves breaking it apart. You toss it in the air, letting wind blow away chaff while grain falls to the ground. This works better on windy days. Calm days mean more work. After threshing, the grain is stored in granaries. But first, tax collectors come. They measure your yield, calculate what you owe, and take the pharaoh's share. You don't negotiate, you don't argue. You pay the tax and hope you have enough left to survive until next harvest. Tax collection is supervised by scribes, who record everything. They write down your name, your land allotment, your yield, your tax payment. These records are permanent. If you cheat, you are caught. If you can't pay, you are punished. Punishment for unpaid taxes includes beatings, confiscation of property, forced labour, or imprisonment. The system is designed to extract maximum resources from farmers while leaving them just enough to survive and plant next year's crop. After taxes, you store your grain in sealed jars or pits lined with straw. This is your food for the entire year. You guard it carefully, ration it precisely, and pray it doesn't get infested with insects or eaten by rats. Bad harvest years happen regularly. Drought, pests, disease, poor flood, all of these can destroy crops. When harvest fails, you eat your seed grain, which means next year's harvest is doomed. You go into debt buying food. You sell possessions, tools, even family members into servitude to survive. Famine is a recurring nightmare. Historical records mention multiple famines, some lasting years. During famine, people eat grass, tree bark, anything remotely digestible. They sell children. They abandon elderly family members. They die by the thousands. The Joseph story in the Bible, where Egypt stores grain for 7 years of plenty to survive 7 years of famine, reflects this reality. Famine is common enough that managing it requires central planning and massive infrastructure. Now let's talk about what happens when Egypt goes to war, because military campaigns mean conscription, and conscription might mean you are leaving your farm to go fight people you've never heard of, for reasons you don't understand. Egypt fights its neighbors regularly, Nubians to the south, Libyans to the west, Canaanites and Hittites to the northeast. These wars are about resources, territory, slaves, and prestige. Your pharaoh wants to expand the empire, and you are the tool he uses. Conscription is mandatory. When the pharaoh needs soldiers, he takes them. You might be a farmer, but now you are a soldier. You are given a spear, maybe a shield, if you are lucky, and told to march. Training is minimal. You are shown how to hold the spear, how to stand in formation, how to follow orders. Then you march to wherever the war is, which might be weeks of walking through desert or along the Nile. Army rations are bread and beer, same as home but less of it. You are always hungry, always thirsty. Water is rationed. Food is barely sufficient. You march in the heat, carrying your weapons and supplies, watching men collapse from exhaustion. Desertion is punished by death. Running away means execution if you are caught. And you probably will be caught, because where are you going? You are in the desert or in foreign territory, and you don't know the way home. Better to stay with the army and hope you survive. Battle in ancient Egypt is brutal. Close quarters violence. You stand in formation, shoulder to shoulder with other conscripts. The enemy is doing the same. You march toward each other, and then you stab people with spears until one side breaks and runs. There is no glory in this. It is not heroic. It is terrifying. Men are screaming, bleeding, dying around you. You are trying not to die, trying to stab enemies before they stab you, trying not to think about what you are doing. Wounds are common. Spear thrusts, sword cuts, arrow injuries. Field medicine is primitive. Wounds are bandaged with whatever is available. Infection kills more men than combat. You watch your fellow soldiers die slowly from infected wounds that turn gangrenous. If you are wounded seriously, you are left behind. The army doesn't have resources to evacuate casualties. You are given water if available, left in shade if possible, and abandoned. Most men left behind die within days. If you survive the battle and the campaign, you march home. This might take weeks or months. You are not paid for your time. You are not compensated for your absence from the farm. You just get to go home, if home still exists. While you were gone, who tended your fields? Your wife if you have one, your children if they're old enough, your elderly parents if they're alive, or maybe no one, and your crops failed, and you return to find your family in debt or starving. Successful military campaigns bring back loot and slaves. As a common soldier, you might get a tiny share of the plunder. Officers and nobles get the lion's share. The pharaoh gets most of it. You get just enough to feel like you participated in victory. Slaves captured in war become property of the state, or are given to nobles and temples. They do the worst work under the worst conditions. They're foreigners, often don't speak Egyptian, and are worked to death in mines, quarries, and fields. Egypt's mines are located in the desert, far from the Nile. Copper mines in Sinai, gold mines in Nubia, stone quarries everywhere. These places are hell on earth. You are sent there as punishment, as a slave, or as a conscripted worker. Mining means working underground in poorly ventilated tunnels, chipping rock with copper tools, breathing dust constantly, and dying young from silicosis. The stone dust coats your lungs, turns them hard and useless. You suffocate slowly while still working. Quarrying means cutting large stone blocks from bedrock. Limestone, granite, sandstone, all used for construction. You spend days cutting a single block free, using copper chisels and pounding stones. Your hands are ruined. Your body is broken. Moving the cut stones means dragging them on wooden sledges, using ropes pulled by dozens or hundreds of men. The stones weigh tons. Men are crushed when stones shift. Ropes break. Sledges collapse. Accidents are common and usually fatal. Once you've cut and moved the stone, it is loaded onto boats and transported to building sites. River transport is safer than land transport, but boats can sink, especially overloaded boats carrying massive stone blocks. At the building site, you unload the stones and drag them to where they'll be used. For pyramids, this means hauling them up ramps. The ramps are long, inclined planes made of mud brick and rubble. Hauling a stone up a ramp requires coordinated effort from massive crews. Construction work is dangerous. Falls kill workers, stones crush workers. Heat stroke, dehydration, exhaustion, all take their toll. The monuments are impressive, but they're built with human lives as much as with stone and labour. The workers are fed and housed at the construction site. Worker villages near pyramids show that labourers lived in barracks-style housing, ate bread and beer, and had access to basic medical care. This is better than working conditions for slaves in mines, but it is still brutal. The ideology claims that working on the pharaoh's monuments is an honour, a religious duty, a way to participate in maintaining cosmic order. The reality is that you are conscripted labour. You work until you are broken, and your name won't appear anywhere on the monument you helped build. Now let's talk about what happens when you get sick, because medical care ranges from surprisingly effective to completely useless, and figuring out which treatment you are getting is a gamble. Egyptians recognize many diseases by symptoms. They know fever, cough, diarrhea, vomiting, swelling, pain. They describe symptoms accurately in medical texts, but their understanding of causes is limited to bad air, curses, and spiritual imbalance. Fever is common and often fatal. Malaria, typhoid, various infections, all cause fever. Treatment includes cool water baths, which actually help reduce temperature. Also magical spells, which don't help but make everyone feel like they're doing something. Intestinal problems are universal. Parasites, bacteria, poor food handling, all contribute. You have chronic diarrhea, bloating. Pain treatment includes various herbal remedies, some of which work. Pomegranate root kills some parasites. Garlic has antibacterial properties. Respiratory infections kill people, especially children and elderly. You cough, wheeze, struggle to breathe. Breathing in smoke from cooking fires damages your lungs. Living in dusty conditions makes it worse. There is no effective treatment except rest and hope. Eye infections are extremely common. The sun, sand, and flies all contribute. Trachoma, a bacterial infection, blinds people when left untreated. Egyptians use various eye medications, including copper-based compounds that have genuine antibacterial effects. Tumors and growths are recognized but rarely treated successfully. Surgical removal is attempted for accessible tumors, but without anesthesia or sterile technique. Surgery often causes more problems than it solves. Most tumors are left alone and hopefully don't grow or metastasize. Arthritis is common, especially in people who do heavy labor. Your joints hurt, swell, become difficult to use. By age 40, you probably have arthritis in your knees, hips, or spine. Treatment is massage with oils and rest, which helps somewhat but doesn't cure anything. Kidney stones and bladder stones cause excruciating pain and sometimes death. Egyptian physicians recognize the condition and describe it accurately. Treatment is mostly pain management with opium poppy derivatives, which actually work for pain, though they don't remove the stones. Hernias happen frequently to men doing heavy lifting. Your abdominal muscles tear, your intestines bulge through, and you are in constant pain. Surgery is attempted sometimes, but success rates are low. Most men with hernias just live with the pain and avoid heavy lifting, which isn't an option if you are a laborer. Skin conditions are universal. Fungal infections, bacterial infections, parasitic infections, all causing rashes, sores, itching. The heat and sand don't help. Treatment includes various pastes and ointments, some containing actual medicinal compounds, like honey and copper. Mental illness is attributed to possession by evil spirits or punishment from gods. Treatment includes exorcism, prayers, wearing protective amulets, There is no understanding of psychological conditions as medical problems. People with mental illness are feared, isolated, or sometimes cared for by family if they're not violent. Epilepsy is seen as sacred disease, possibly a sign of divine communication or demonic possession, depending on who you ask. People with epilepsy are treated with suspicion and sometimes reverence. There is no medical treatment, just magical protection and prayers. Paralysis from injury or stroke leaves people unable to work and dependent on family. There is no rehabilitation, no physical therapy. You either recover naturally or you don't. If you don't recover, you are a burden, and whether your family can afford to support you determines whether you survive. Now let's talk about marriage and family, because these institutions are central to Egyptian life, but structured very differently from modern relationships. Marriage is arranged by families, usually when you are in your early to mid-teens. Girls marry younger than boys, often at 12 or 13, because they're considered adult, once they can bear children. Boys marry at 15 to 17 once they can support a family. There is no wedding ceremony in the legal sense. Marriage is a private contract between families. You agree on the marriage settlement, what each party contributes, what happens if the marriage ends. Then you move in together, and you are married. The marriage settlement protects women somewhat. If divorce happens, the wife keeps her property and gets a share of marital assets. This gives women some economic security, though they're still socially disadvantaged. Divorce is possible and not heavily stigmatized. If the marriage isn't working, you can divorce. Men initiate divorce more easily than women, but women can divorce abusive or neglectful husbands. You simply separate, divide property according to the marriage contract, and move on. Remarriage is common, especially for young widows or widowers. Life is short, people die, and survivors need economic partners. You might marry 2 or 3 times over your life as spouses die, and you remarry. Polygamy is legal but rare except among the wealthy. Most men can't afford multiple wives. The pharaoh and nobles might have several wives plus concubines. Common men have one wife, because that is all they can support. Concubines are women who live with a man but aren't legally married. Their status is lower than wives, and their children have fewer rights. Rich men keep concubines as status symbols. Poor men don't have resources for concubines. Children are expected, not optional. Your wife's primary role is bearing children. You need children to work the farm, support you in old age, and perform funerary rites when you die. Childless marriages are considered failures. Infertility is blamed on women, never men. If your wife doesn't conceive, it is her fault. Treatments include various herbs, spells, prayers to fertility goddesses. If nothing works, divorce and remarriage are common solutions. Contraception is attempted using pessaries made from various substances. Acacia gum has spermicidal properties and might actually prevent some pregnancies. Most methods don't work, and women just get pregnant repeatedly until they die in childbirth or reach menopause. Pregnancy is both celebrated and feared. A pregnancy means potential for another worker, another child, continuation of the family. It also means risk of death. Every pregnancy might kill you, and everyone knows women who died giving birth. Pregnant women continue working until labor starts. There is no maternity leave. You work the fields, grind grain, carry water, do everything you normally do while pregnant. Rest is a luxury you can't afford. Labor happens at home with a midwife and female relatives attending. You squat on bricks while pushing, supposedly making birth easier. Pain management is minimal. You scream, you push, and hopefully you and the baby survive. If birth complications happen, there is little that can be done. Breech births, cord around the neck, hemorrhage. All of these can kill mother, baby, or both. The midwife tries her best, but without modern medical knowledge, many problems are unsolvable. Surviving birth doesn't mean you are safe. Infection kills many new mothers in the days after delivery. Fever, pain, foul discharge. All signs of infection that will probably kill you. You lie in bed, getting sicker, and hope you recover. If you survive childbirth, you nurse the baby for 2 to 3 years. Breast milk is the only safe food for infants. Weaning too early means feeding the baby food that might kill them with contamination or disease. Mothers develop strong attachments to children who survive infancy. You've already lost several babies and toddlers. The children who make it to age 5 or 6 are precious because they might actually grow up. You invest emotionally in survivors while trying not to get too attached to babies who might not make it. Fathers are more distant. You work all day, you are tired, and child rearing is women's work. You provide resources, make major decisions, and represent the family to the outside world. Daily care of children isn't your responsibility. Children learn by watching and imitating. Girls follow their mothers, learning cooking, weaving, childcare. Boys follow their fathers, learning farming, crafts, or whatever the father's occupation is. Education is apprenticeship, not formal schooling. Family size is large if you can afford it. You might have 6, 8, 10 children, knowing that half won't survive to adulthood. The surviving children support the family economy, care for parents in old age, and continue the family line. Extended families live close together. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all nearby. This provides support network, shared resources, and help during emergencies. You are never truly alone, but you also never have privacy. Family disputes are mediated by elders or local officials. If you have a problem with a relative, you try to solve it within the family. If that fails, you appeal to authority figures. Family reputation matters, so public disputes are embarrassing and avoided when possible. Inheritance passes through male lines primarily, but women can inherit property, especially in the absence of male heirs. You want sons to inherit your land and carry on your name. Daughters marry out, joining their husband's family. When parents age, children care for them. There are no nursing homes, no social safety net. Your children are your retirement plan. If you don't have children, you are dependent on charity or the temple. Elderly parents who are cared for maintain some authority. If you are too disabled to work but still mentally sharp, your advice and decisions might still be respected. If you are senile or completely incapacitated, you are a burden everyone hopes won't last too long. Dying at home surrounded by family is the goal. You want your children present, performing the proper rituals, ensuring your body is buried correctly. Dying alone or away from family is a tragedy because it endangers your afterlife. After death, the family prepares the body if they can afford it, or arranges for professionals if they're wealthy. Funerary preparations are expensive, and the family goes into debt to ensure proper burial, because the alternative is eternal extinction. Now let's talk about crime and punishment, because Egyptian law is harsh, public, and designed to deter through fear as much as justice. Theft is common, and punishment is severe. Stealing food might get you beaten. Stealing valuables might get your hand cut off. Stealing from temples or tombs might get you executed. The severity depends on what you stole and who you stole from. Murder is usually punished by execution, though the method varies. Beheading, drowning, burning, impalement, all used depending on the crime's severity and the criminal's social status. Executions are public, serving as deterrence and entertainment. Assault and battery are handled with fines or corporal punishment. If you injure someone, you pay compensation to the victim. If you can't pay, you are beaten. The goal is to make you regret harming others and discourage future violence. Rape is a crime, though the details of prosecution and punishment are unclear from surviving records. Women have some legal protections, but enforcement depends on social status. A wealthy woman's complaint is taken seriously. A poor woman's complaint might be ignored. Adultery is punished, especially for women. A woman caught in adultery might have her nose cut off, disfiguring her as a warning to others and marking her crime permanently. Men faced less severe punishment, reflecting the double standard common in ancient societies. False testimony in legal proceedings is punished harshly. Lying to officials or in court can result in beatings, mutilation, or execution. The legal system depends on truthful testimony, and undermining it is treated as a serious crime. Corruption among officials is punished when discovered, but discovery is rare because officials protect each other. Bribery is common. Justice often goes to whoever can pay the most. The system is biased toward the wealthy and powerful. Prisons exist but aren't used for long, term incarceration. You are imprisoned while awaiting trial or punishment, not as the punishment itself. Long-term imprisonment is expensive and impractical. Punishment is swift, physical, and final. Forced labor is a common punishment. If you can't pay a fine or debt, you work it off. This might mean years of labor in mines, quarries, or on building projects. It is a death sentence disguised as punishment, because few people survive years of forced labor. Exile is used for political crimes or serious offenses where execution might cause problems. You are banished from your home, your family, your community. In an ancient world where your identity is tied to your location and relationships. Exile is social death. The legal system is administered by local officials, priests, and eventually royal judges. There is no separation of powers. The same people who govern also judge legal cases. Impartiality is an alien concept. Appeals are possible if you are wealthy or connected. Common people get one hearing before a local official, and that decision is final. Rich people can appeal to higher authorities, drag out proceedings, and use influence to change outcomes. Let's wrap this nightmare journey through ancient Egypt by considering what we've learned and how it changes our perception of this famous civilization. Ancient Egypt lasted over 3,000 years, longer than the time from the pyramids to Cleopatra than from Cleopatra to us. During that immense span, conditions varied. Some periods were prosperous, others were catastrophic. The Egypt of the Old Kingdom wasn't the same as the New Kingdom or the Ptolemaic period, but certain constants remained. The Nile flooded annually, or it didn't. The sun beat down mercilessly. Parasites infected the population. Disease killed children. Work was hard. Life was short. These fundamental realities didn't change much over millennia. The monuments we admire were built by people who suffered greatly. Every stone in every pyramid represents hours of human labor, sweat, pain, and sometimes death. The beautiful art was created by craftsmen who breathed toxic fumes and died young. The golden treasures in museums were hoarded by elites, while common people starved. This doesn't diminish Egypt's achievements, it contextualizes them. The pyramids are even more impressive when you understand they were built without modern tools, without machines, by people who were chronically malnourished and diseased, but still accomplished the impossible. The complexity of Egyptian society, the sophistication of their art and architecture, the advances in medicine and mathematics, all of this happened despite horrific living conditions. Humans created beauty and meaning while suffering in ways that would destroy most modern people. There is a tendency to romanticize the past, to imagine that ancient people were somehow different from us, tougher, more resilient, able to handle hardships we couldn't face. But they weren't different. They were humans with the same capacity for pain, fear, and suffering as anyone today. They didn't handle the hardship better. They just had no choice. You can't escape the heat when there is no air conditioning. You can't avoid disease when you don't understand germ theory. You can't refuse forced labor when the alternative is execution. What they did have was different expectations. They didn't know life could be better because they'd never seen better. The heat was normal. The parasites were normal. Watching your children die was tragic but normal. Their baseline for acceptable living conditions was so much lower than ours that what we'd consider a nightmare, they considered life. This makes their achievements more remarkable, not less. They built civilization without any of the advantages we take for granted. No refrigeration, no antibiotics, no electricity, no clean water, no reliable food supply. Just human ingenuity, back-breaking labor, and religious belief that gave meaning to suffering. So tonight, when you go to sleep in your climate-controlled room, in your comfortable bed, with your clean water, and your dental care and your life expectancy of 75+ years, take a moment to appreciate that you are not waking up at dawn to work in 100-degree heat while covered in flies and slowly dying from parasites. And then maybe appreciate that ancient Egyptians did exactly that every day for thousands of years. And they still managed to create one of the most remarkable civilizations in human history. That is the real story of ancient Egypt. Not just the pyramids and the pharaohs, but the millions of ordinary people who lived, worked, suffered, and died to create something extraordinary that we're still trying to understand thousands of years later. Sleep well tonight, and be glad you are sleeping now, not then. Now let's talk about childhood, because being a kid in ancient Egypt is only slightly better than being an adult. And in some ways it is worse, because you were small, weak, and completely powerless. You were born at home, delivered by a midwife, with your mother squatting on bricks while in labor. The bricks are called birthing bricks, and they're decorated with protective spells and images of deities. Whether they help is debatable, but they're traditional, so they're used. If you survive birth, which is not guaranteed, you are nursed by your mother for 2 to 3 years. Extended breastfeeding provides nutrition, and some disease protection through antibodies in milk. It also serves as birth control, delaying the next pregnancy, though not preventing it entirely. Wet nurses are employed by wealthy families who can afford them. If a wealthy woman dies in childbirth, or can't nurse for medical reasons, a wet nurse feeds the baby. Wet nurses are usually poor women with their own children, who nurse wealthy babies for payment, while their own children might go hungry. Names are given shortly after birth, and they matter enormously. Your name has power, magical significance. It is part of your soul. Losing your name means losing your identity, which is why tomb robbers sometimes chisel out the deceased's name, killing them a second time in the afterlife. Common names reference gods. Amenhotep means Ammon is satisfied. Ramesses means Ra has fashioned him. Your name connects you to divine power and protection. Having a god's name in your name provides supernatural protection, at least in theory. Amulets are placed on newborns immediately. Eye of Horus for protection, Ankh for life, Scarab for rebirth. These aren't decorative. They're essential defensive magic against evil forces that want to harm vulnerable infants. Infant care is basic. You are swaddled in linen, kept close to your mother for warmth and feeding. No cribs, no separate sleeping spaces. You sleep with your mother, which provides bonding and warmth, but also risks accidental suffocation if she rolls over in sleep. Colic, crying, and fussiness are managed with various remedies. Poppy-based medications that are basically infant opium. This quiets the baby but also creates dependency and can be dangerous. Many remedies are harmless herbs. Others are actively harmful but used anyway because tradition says they work. Weaning happens when the next baby arrives or when you are old enough to eat solid food. Weaning foods include bread soaked in milk or beer, mashed vegetables and watered down stew. Your digestive system adapts, or you get sick and possibly die. Toys exist, small dolls, spinning tops, balls made from leather and papyrus. But play is limited. By age 5 or 6 you are working, watching younger siblings, carrying water, helping with simple tasks. Childhood is short because labor is needed. Education is reserved for the elite. If your father is a scribe, you might learn to read and write. If your father is a craftsman, you learn his trade. If your father is a farmer, you learn farming. Social class determines your future from birth. Scribe schools are harsh. Students are beaten for mistakes. Memorization is endless. You copy hieroglyphs until your hand cramps and your eyes blur. But if you succeed, you escape physical labor forever, which makes the beatings worthwhile. The curriculum for scribes includes writing, mathematics, literature, and history. You learn to write on ostraca, broken pottery shards used as cheap writing surfaces. Papyrus is expensive and reserved for final copies and important documents. Hieroglyphic writing is complex with hundreds of symbols. You memorize them all, learn when to use each, practice endlessly. The alternative is farming or manual labor. So you endure the education, no matter how brutal. Mathematics education teaches practical skills, calculating land area, measuring grain, determining tax obligations, dividing rations. You learn fractions, geometry, and problem solving. Egyptian mathematics is sophisticated and primarily focused on practical applications. Physical education doesn't exist for common children. You don't need teaching to be strong when your daily work involves heavy labor. Wealthy children might learn wrestling, swimming, and hunting as recreational skills and military preparation. Child mortality is so high that parents can't afford to invest emotionally in young children. You hope your kids survive, but you can't be devastated every time one dies because that happens constantly. Some historians suggest parents were emotionally distant until children reached age 5 or so and looked likely to survive. Children are depicted in art as miniature adults, naked and small, but essentially junior versions of grown people. Childhood as a distinct life stage with unique needs and protections doesn't really exist. You are just a small, weak person who will hopefully become a full-sized worker. Diseases kill children easily. Dysentery, measles, smallpox, malaria, all of these hit children hard. Without immunity, without proper nutrition, without medical care, children die from diseases that are treatable or preventable in the modern world. Accidents kill children too. Drowning in the Nile, burns from cooking fires, snake bites, scorpion stings, crocodile attacks. The environment is hostile, and children are vulnerable in ways adults aren't. Child labor is normalized. You are not too young to work. You are just less capable than adults, so you get simpler tasks. But you work all day, and you work hard, because the family economy requires it. Now let's explore the different types of craftspeople in more detail, because Egypt's remarkable civilization depended on specialized workers whose lives were difficult in unique ways. Potters work with clay from the Nile, shaping it into jars, bowls, and containers of all sizes. You spend your days with your hands in clay, spinning the potter's wheel, shaping vessels. The wheel is foot-powered, requiring constant motion. Your legs are strong, your hands are calloused, and your back aches from hunching over the wheel. The clay dries your skin, cracking your hands. You develop chronic skin problems from constant exposure to wet clay. In winter, this is painful. In summer, the clay dust coats your lungs as it dries. Firing pottery requires a kiln, essentially a hot oven that bakes the clay until it hardens. Tending the kiln means exposure to extreme heat. You stand near the fire, monitoring temperature, adding fuel, pulling out finished pieces. Burns are common. Heat stroke happens regularly. The pottery you make is everyday items. Storage jars for grain, oil, wine, cooking pots, water vessels. These are essential, which means you are valuable, but they're also basic, which means you are not wealthy. You make enough to survive, barely. Weavers turn flax into linen thread and linen thread into fabric. If you are a weaver, you spend your days processing flax, spinning thread, and weaving cloth on looms. Processing flax is labor intensive. The flax plants are harvested, soaked in water to rot the outer fibers, beaten to separate the usable fibers from the waste, then combed to align the fibers. This work is wet, smelly, and hard on your hands. Spinning thread means drawing out the flax fibers and twisting them into thread using a spindle, a weighted stick that spins to create tension. You do this for hours, creating thread for weaving. It is tedious, repetitive work that never ends because there is always more thread needed. Weaving on a loom requires sitting or standing in uncomfortable positions for extended periods. You pass the shuttle back and forth, creating fabric from thread. The work is precise, requiring concentration and good eyesight. As you age and your vision fails, your work suffers. Linen is Egypt's primary fabric. Cotton doesn't exist yet. Wool is used but considered ritually impure by some religious standards. Linen is cool in summer, layers for warmth in winter, and can be woven in various grades from coarse to fine. Fine linen for the wealthy is almost transparent, delicate, and requires expert weaving. You might spend days on a single piece of fine linen. Coarse linen for the poor is thick, rough, and wears hard. You produce it quickly because quantity matters more than quality. Carpenters work with wood, which in Egypt means imported wood because native trees are limited. Palm trees provide timber, but it is poor quality. Good wood comes from Lebanon, brought down the coast by ship, and it is expensive. If you are a carpenter, you work with acacia, sycamore, and when you are lucky, imported cedar. You make furniture, boats, tools, construction materials. Your tools are copper or bronze saws, adzes, chisels, and drills. They're softer than modern steel tools, so they dull quickly and require constant sharpening. Furniture making for the wealthy is skilled work. You create beds, chairs, stools, and chests with joinery, inlay, and decoration. This requires precision, patience, and years of apprenticeship. The furniture you make lasts generations and becomes family heirlooms. Boat building is critical because the Nile is Egypt's highway. You construct boats from planks sewn together with rope, sealed with resin. The boats are flat, bottomed for shallow water, with sails for wind and oars for calm days. Building a boat that doesn't sink requires skill and experience. Coffin making is a specialized branch of carpentry. Coffins are necessary for proper burial, and wealthy Egyptians commission elaborate nested coffins painted with protective spells. You spend weeks or months creating a single set of coffins, which will house someone's mummy for eternity. Jewelers work with gold, silver, copper, and semi-precious stones. If you are a jeweler, you have valuable skills and work with valuable materials, which means you are watched constantly to prevent theft. Gold comes from Nubian mines, brought north as tribute or trade. You work it by hammering it thin, heating, and annealing it to keep it workable, creating intricate designs. Gold doesn't tarnish, which makes it ideal for jewelry and funerary goods meant to last forever. Silver is rarer than gold in early Egypt, making it more valuable. Later it becomes more available through trade. You work silver the same as gold, creating jewelry, vessels, and decorative objects. Stones like lapis lazuli, turquoise, carnelian, and amethyst are shaped into beads, amulets, and inlays. You drill the stones using copper drills and abrasive sand, a slow process that takes hours for a single bead. Breathing stone dust damages your lungs. but the work is valuable enough to be worth the risk. Jewelry isn't just decorative. It is protective magic, status symbol, and wealth storage all combined. Amulets with specific shapes and stones provide different protections. Wearing the right jewelry can literally save your life, according to Egyptian belief. Stonemasons are the builders of monuments, the men who shape the civilization's most enduring works. If you are a stonemason, your work is visible thousands of years later, but your life is hard, dangerous, and probably short. Working with limestone is relatively easy. Limestone is soft enough to carve with copper tools. You chisel hieroglyphs, reliefs, and decorative elements into temple walls. The stone dust coats everything, gets in your lungs, and slowly kills you with silicosis. Granite is harder, requiring bronze tools and tremendous effort. You pound the granite with harder stones, gradually wearing away material to create the desired shape. A single granite statue might require years of work. The effort is exhausting, and the noise from constant pounding damages your hearing. Sandstone is intermediate in hardness. You work it for blocks, columns, and large architectural elements. The scale of sandstone construction is enormous, with temples built from thousands of massive blocks, all cut, shaped, and fitted by hand. Stone polishing creates the smooth surfaces seen on statues and fine architectural elements. You use progressively finer abrasives, rubbing the stone until it is smooth and shiny. This work is less dangerous than cutting, but equally tedious. Architects and master builders oversee construction, but rarely do the physical work themselves. If you rise to this level, you direct crews, solve engineering problems, and translate Pharaoh's vision into reality. Your name might be recorded, giving you a form of immortality denied to common labourers. Now let's talk about women's work in more detail, because women's labour was essential to Egypt's economy, even though it is often overlooked in discussions of ancient civilization. Grinding grain is women's work, and it is endless. Every day you kneel before the grinding stone and process grain into flour. You take handfuls of wheat or barley, place them on the stone, and grind with another stone, using your full body weight to crush the grain. This work destroys your knees. Mummies of women show severe arthritis in knee joints from years of kneeling while grinding. Your lower back is ruined from the hunched position. Your hands and wrists develop chronic pain from the repetitive motion. The flour you produce contains stone particles from the grinding stones wearing down. This means everyone who eats bread is slowly grinding down their teeth with stone dust. You know this because you see it in everyone's mouths. But there is no alternative. Grain must be ground, and grinding produces stone dust. Baking bread is also women's work. Once you've ground the flour, you mix it with water, and sometimes beer, knead it into dough, and shape it into loaves. The dough is rough on your hands, and kneading large batches requires strength. Baking requires an oven, usually a clay structure heated with burning fuel. You shape the dough into loaves or cones, place them in or on the oven, and monitor the baking. The heat is intense. Burns are common. In summer, standing next to a hot oven in Egypt's heat is torture. The bread you make is the staple food, consumed at every meal. You bake daily because bread doesn't keep well in the heat. This means every day you grind, knead, and bake, an endless cycle of labour that defines your existence. Brewing beer is women's work too. You take coarsely ground grain or bread, mix it with water, add dates for sweetness, and let it ferment. The fermentation happens naturally from wild yeasts in the air. After a few days, you strain out the solids and have beer. The beer is thick, nutritious, and mildly alcoholic. It is safer than water and provides calories and vitamins. Everyone drinks it, and everyone needs you to keep brewing it. You are the brewery, working constantly to supply your family and possibly selling surplus. Textile work is primarily female. You process flax, spin thread, weave cloth, and sew garments. This work is done in groups often, women sitting together spinning or weaving while talking. It is social, which makes it slightly less tedious, but it is still endless. Sewing is done with copper or bone needles and linen thread. You make and repair clothing, bedding, and other fabric items. Your work keeps the family clothed, and skill at sewing can generate income if you make items for sale. Laundry is brutal work. You take dirty clothing and linens to the Nile, beat them against rocks to loosen dirt, rinse them repeatedly, wring them out, and spread them to dry. The Nile's water isn't clean, so you are washing dirty clothes in dirty water, but it is better than not washing at all. The constant wet-dry cycle is hard on fabric, wearing it out faster. Your hands are raw from wringing out wet linen. In winter, the cold water is painful. In summer, the heat while working near water is exhausting. Laundry day is always terrible. Childcare is women's work, which means you are responsible for feeding, cleaning, and supervising children, while also doing all your other work. Older children help with younger ones, but infants and toddlers need constant attention. You carry babies with you while working. Slings and wraps keep the baby close, while your hands are free for grinding, baking, or other tasks. You nurse on demand, which means stopping work frequently. The baby's crying is constant background noise. Fetching water is usually women's or children's work. You carry clay jars to the Nile, fill them, and carry them home. Water is heavy. The jars hold several liters. You make multiple trips daily. Your head, neck, and spine are damaged from carrying heavy loads. The trip to the Nile is dangerous, as mentioned. Crocodiles are real threats, but you can't avoid it. Water is necessary for drinking, cooking, cleaning, so you go carefully. You watch for danger, and you hope you make it back safely. Cooking is women's work, preparing the 2 or 3 daily meals from limited ingredients. You boil vegetables, cook fish if available, roast meat occasionally, and always make bread. The cooking fire is hot, smoky, and dangerous. Food preparation includes gutting fish, plucking birds, butchering animals when available. This work is bloody, smelly, and attracts flies. You do it anyway because food doesn't prepare itself. The flies are everywhere, landing on the food, on you, in your eyes and mouth. Preservation is critical because food spoils quickly. You dry fish in the sun, salt meat, pickle vegetables in brine, and store grain carefully. Your preservation methods determine whether your family eats during lean times or starves. Women also participate in religious rituals, though their roles vary by period and location. You might be a priestess if you are from the right family, performing rituals in temples, conducting ceremonies, and maintaining cult statues. Temple priestesses often sing, dance, and play music during religious ceremonies. If you have musical talent, this might be your occupation. It is prestigious work, but also demanding, requiring you to maintain ritual purity and follow strict rules. Midwifery is specialized women's work. If you are a midwife, you are called when women go into labor. You assist with delivery, using your experience and traditional techniques to help mother and baby survive. Your knowledge is passed down from experienced midwives, not from formal education. You learn by apprenticeship, assisting at births until you are skilled enough to manage them alone. Your success rate determines your reputation. Midwives use spells and amulets alongside practical techniques. You recite prayers during labor, place protective amulets on the laboring woman, and invoke goddesses like Torit and Hathor for help. Whether magic helps is debatable, but it provides psychological comfort. You handle emergencies with limited tools. Breech births, hemorrhaging, prolonged labor, all require intervention. Sometimes you save both mother and baby. Sometimes you save one. Sometimes you watch them both die, and there is nothing you can do. The emotional toll of midwifery is heavy. You witness suffering, death, and grief regularly. But you also see new life, successful births, and joy. You are essential to your community, providing a service no one else can. Now let's talk about slavery in ancient Egypt in more detail, because it is an aspect of society often glossed over, but critical to understanding how the civilization functioned. Slavery in Egypt is different from later historical slavery in some ways, but similar in its fundamental injustice. You become a slave through war, debt, or birth to enslaved parents. Once enslaved, you are property, with minimal rights and no freedom. War captives are a major source of slaves. When Egypt conquers foreign territories, they take prisoners. You might be a Nubian, Libyan, or Canaanite captured in battle and enslaved. You are marched back to Egypt, sold or assigned to temples, nobles, or state projects. As a war captive slave, you probably don't speak Egyptian initially. You are in a foreign land, separated from your culture and family, forced to work for people who view you as property. Your life expectancy is shorter than Egyptian peasants, which is saying something. Debt slavery happens when you can't pay what you owe. If you are indebted and can't pay, you or your family members might be enslaved until the debt is worked off. This is temporary in theory, though in practice you might die before earning freedom. Children born to slaves are slaves themselves. You inherit your mother's status, regardless of your father. If your mother is enslaved, you are born into slavery with no hope of freedom, unless your owner chooses to free you. Slaves work the worst jobs: mining, quarrying, field labor in the hottest conditions. Anything too dangerous or unpleasant for free workers. You are expendable. If you die, your owner loses property but can acquire another slave. Treatment of slaves varies by owner. Some masters are relatively humane, providing adequate food and not beating slaves excessively. Others are brutal, working slaves to death and replacing them. You have no say in who owns you or how you are treated. Temple slaves are owned by religious institutions and work temple lands, maintain temple buildings, and assist with religious functions. Being temple property might be slightly better than being owned privately, because temples have rules about proper behavior, including toward slaves. Household slaves in wealthy homes do domestic work. If you are a household slave, you cook, clean, fetch water, and perform whatever tasks the family requires. This is less physically destructive than quarry work, but means you are constantly supervised and have zero privacy. Sexual exploitation of slaves happens, though records are limited. Female slaves are particularly vulnerable. You have no legal recourse if your owner or the owner's family abuse you. Your body is property, and resistance can be punished with violence or death. Some slaves gain privileges through skill or favor. If you are a skilled craftsman before enslavement, you might work at your craft while enslaved. Your work benefits your owner. But at least you are not breaking rocks in a quarry. Manumission, being freed by your owner, is possible but rare. You might be freed as a reward for loyal service, or freed in your owner's will after they die. Freedom might be conditional, requiring you to continue working for the family or perform specific duties. Freed slaves have limited status. You are no longer property, but you are not fully equal to free-born Egyptians. Social stigma follows you. Your opportunities are limited, but you are free, which is infinitely better than slavery. Escaped slaves face severe punishment if caught. Running away is treated as theft because you are stealing yourself, your owner's property. Punishment includes beating, mutilation, or execution. The risk is high enough that most slaves don't attempt escape. Where would you run anyway? Egypt is surrounded by desert. Crossing the desert without supplies is a death sentence. Staying in Egypt means you are a fugitive in a society where everyone knows you don't belong. Escape is nearly impossible. The psychological damage of slavery is immense. You are denied autonomy, dignity, and humanity. You exist to serve. Your suffering doesn't matter, except as it affects your ability to work. The trauma is generational, passed to children born into slavery. Now let's explore daily religious obligations in more detail, because religion isn't a weekly temple visit. It is woven into everything you do. Morning prayers are standard. You wake and immediately recite prayers, thanking gods for allowing you to see another day. This isn't optional or casual. It is required both for personal protection and to maintain Ma'at, the cosmic order. Before eating, you offer a portion of your food to the gods. You set aside a small amount of bread, beer, or whatever you are eating. Place it in a designated spot and say a prayer. The gods consume the spiritual essence while physical food remains. Later you might eat the offering yourself or feed it to animals. Household shrines are common. You have a small altar or niche with images or figurines of protective deities. You make small offerings there daily, light incense if you can afford it, and pray for your family's safety and prosperity. Protective rituals are performed constantly. You recite spells when leaving the house, when crossing the Nile, when seeing bad omens. These spells ward off evil, protect against misfortune, and ensure divine favor. Skipping them risks supernatural disaster. Amulets must be worn correctly. Each amulet has specific placement and orientation requirements. Wearing them wrong makes them ineffective or possibly harmful. You check your amulets regularly, replace broken ones, and ensure children wear appropriate protection. Monthly and seasonal festivals require participation. You are expected to attend, bring offerings, and join in celebrations. These festivals honor specific gods, commemorate mythological events, or mark agricultural milestones. Missing important festivals is religiously and socially unacceptable. The Opet Festival is a major annual event in Thebes. The cult statue of Amun travels from Karnak to Luxor Temple in a grand procession. You line the route to cheer, make offerings, and participate in feasting. The festival lasts days, disrupting normal work, but providing rare leisure and religious merit. The Wag Festival honors the dead. You visit family tombs, make offerings to deceased ancestors, and perform rituals ensuring their continued existence in the afterlife. This is both religious obligation and family duty. Personal vows are taken seriously. If you pray for something specific and promise an offering in return, you must fulfill that vow. Failing to honor a vow angers the gods and invites punishment. You track your promises and ensure they're completed. Purification rituals are frequent. Before entering sacred spaces, before religious ceremonies, even before some daily activities, you purify yourself with water, natron, or incense. Ritual purity is necessary for divine interaction and protection. Taboos must be observed. Certain foods are forbidden on specific days. Some activities are prohibited during religious festivals. Sexual activity is restricted during purification periods. Breaking taboos brings divine displeasure and community censure. Dream interpretation is religious practice. You report significant dreams to priests who interpret them and prescribe protective measures if needed. Dreams are messages from gods or warnings of supernatural threats. Ignoring them is dangerous. Oracles are consulted for major decisions. You bring questions to temple oracles, who communicate divine will through various means. The oracle's answer determines your actions. Disobeying divine guidance invites disaster. Magical practitioners are consulted for specific problems. If you believe you are cursed, haunted, or suffering supernatural attack, you hire a magician who performs counter spells, creates protective amulets, and intercedes with spirits on your behalf. Medical treatment and religion are inseparable. Doctors prescribe medicine and spells together. You take herbal remedies while wearing healing amulets and reciting prayers. Physical and spiritual treatment are equally important. Children's religious education starts early. You teach your children prayers, proper behavior toward gods, recognition of religious symbols, and performance of basic rituals. Religious literacy is essential for survival and prosperity. Death preparations are religious requirements. You save money for burial, commission funeral texts, acquire amulets for the afterlife, and make arrangements for continued offerings. These preparations ensure eternal life and are more important than comfortable living. Now let's talk about what happens in different seasons with more specificity. Because Egypt's climate creates distinct seasonal experiences. Akit, the inundation season from June to September, is when the Nile floods. The water rises, covers fields, and transforms Egypt into a series of islands and channels. You can't farm, so you are reassigned to other work or conscripted for building projects. The flood's arrival is celebrated. You've spent months watching the river shrink, seeing fields dry out, worrying about water supply. When the flood arrives, it brings relief, moisture, and promise of next year's harvest. But flooding also brings problems. The water carries disease. Parasites are more concentrated. Mosquitoes breed in huge numbers. Waterborne illness kills people throughout the flood season. Navigation changes completely. Boats travel over fields that were dry land months before. You navigate by landmarks that are partially submerged. Getting lost is easy. Capsizing in strong currents is deadly. Fishing is excellent during the flood. Fish are abundant, moving with the floodwaters. You catch more fish in a few weeks than the rest of the year combined. You preserve the excess by drying or salting it. Crocodiles and hippos are more dangerous during the flood. They're displaced from normal territories, moving through areas where you live and work. Encounters increase. Deaths from animal attacks spike during flood season. Humidity is higher, which means clothes never fully dry. Mold grows on everything, and you are constantly damp. The heat combined with humidity makes the air feel thick and oppressive. Perit, the growing season from October to February, begins when the flood recedes. The water leaves behind fertile silt, and you plant crops immediately. This is the critical season where your effort determines whether you eat next year. The temperature is more moderate in Perit. Winter in Egypt means daytime temperatures around 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Cool nights, occasionally even cold nights where you need blankets. This is the most comfortable season for physical labor. Planting happens quickly. You have a narrow window to get seeds in the ground, while soil is moist from the flood. Delays mean dry soil that is harder to work and lower germination rates. Tending crops means constant irrigation. You channel water from the Nile to fields using canals and manual irrigation devices. The shaduf, a counterweighted bucket, lets you lift water from canals to higher fields. You do this for hours daily. Weeding, bird scaring, and pest control occupy your days. Crops must be protected constantly. Children help with bird scaring, throwing stones and making noise to drive away flocks that would eat the growing grain. Winter nights can be surprisingly cold. Your mud brick house isn't insulated well. You huddle under wool blankets, share body heat with family, and wake up cold. Cold is preferable to heat, but you are not equipped for it. Shemu, the dry season from March to May, is harvest time and the hottest part of the year. Temperatures climb into the 90s and above. The Nile is at its lowest. Water is scarce. Work is brutal. Harvest must happen quickly. The grain is ready, and you need to cut it, thresh it, and store it before it is destroyed by pests, weather, or simple spoilage. Everyone works harvest, dawn to dusk, in the heat. The Kamsin, a hot wind from the desert, blows during Shemu. It carries sand, dust, and heat. The air becomes brown with dust. Breathing is difficult. Visibility drops. You work through it because stopping isn't an option. Dust storms can last days. You stay inside when possible. Cover your face when you must go out, and wait for the storm to pass. Dust infiltrates everything. You eat gritty food, breathe dusty air, and cough constantly. Water scarcity is severe late in Shemu. The Nile is low, canals are dry, wells are depleted. You ration water carefully. Bathing becomes luxury. Drinking water is prioritized. Plants die. Animals suffer. Heat exhaustion and heat stroke kill people during Shemu. You are working hard in temperatures exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit. You sweat constantly, lose fluids, become dehydrated. Even while drinking as much as available, people collapse and die in the fields. The end of Shemu is desperate waiting for the next flood. You've harvested what you can. Your stores are depleting. The heat is unbearable. You pray for the Nile to rise, knowing your survival depends on water that is beyond your control. Let's end by imagining specific people and their stories, because statistics and descriptions don't capture individual human experiences. Imagine you are Neferet, a 14-year-old girl in 1250 BC, recently married to a farmer twice your age. You've just moved from your parents' house to your husband's house, which you now share with his elderly mother, his brother's family, and livestock. Your days start before dawn, grinding grain for bread. Your knees already hurt, and you've only been married 3 months. You bake bread, brew beer, fetch water from the Nile while watching for crocodiles, and try to please your husband and mother-in-law who criticize everything you do. You are pregnant, though you don't know it yet. In a few months you'll realize you've missed your monthly bleeding. In 9 months you'll give birth to your first child, if you survive the pregnancy. If you survive childbirth, if the baby survives infancy. So many ifs. You miss your mother. You miss your sisters. You cry sometimes when you are alone, fetching water or working in the courtyard. But you are married now, an adult, expected to manage a household and raise children. Childhood is over, and you are terrified. Or imagine you are Kaimwaset, a 35-year-old scribe in Thebes, employed by a temple maintaining tax records. You are educated, literate, and prosperous by most standards. You have a wife, 3 living children, and a comfortable house. But you have persistent stomach pain, blood in your urine, and chronic fatigue. You don't know you have schistosomiasis from bathing in the Nile as a child. You don't know the parasites in your blood vessels are slowly damaging your organs. You just know you are tired and in pain. You visited a physician who prescribed medicine and amulets. The medicine is honey and herbs, which helps somewhat. The amulets provide psychological comfort, but you are not improving. You are getting worse, slowly, inexorably. You worry about your family. If you die, who will support them? Your oldest son is only 10, not old enough to be a scribe yet. Your wife could remarry, but would her new husband care for your children? You lie awake at night, worrying, praying, hoping you'll recover. Or imagine you are Peneb, a 45-year-old stonemason working on a pharaoh's tomb in the Valley of the Kings. You've spent 25 years cutting stone, carving hieroglyphs, creating monuments that will last forever. Your name appears in worker records, though not on the monuments themselves. Your hands are gnarled from decades of gripping tools. Your lungs are damaged from breathing stone dust. Your hearing is poor from constant hammering. Your back is ruined from years of bent. Overwork. You are 45, which makes you elderly by Egyptian standards. You've outlived 2 wives, both died in childbirth. Your current wife is young, barely older than your oldest daughter. You have 7 children, 4 still living. You've lost count of how many grandchildren you have. You are respected in your community. Master masons are valued. You've trained apprentices, passed on your knowledge. But you know your working days are limited. Your hands shake. Your vision is failing. Soon you'll be unable to work, dependent on your children. You hope you've saved enough for a decent burial. You've commissioned a coffin, acquired some amulets, arranged for basic mummification. It is not the elaborate burial of nobles, but it is enough to ensure your afterlife. You think about death, often now preparing for the journey to the field of reeds. These individual stories, multiplied by millions across thousands of years, create the human reality behind Egypt's monuments and achievements. So tonight, when you go to sleep in your climate-controlled room, in your comfortable bed, with your clean water and your dental care and your life expectancy of 75+ years, take a moment to appreciate that you are not waking up at dawn to work in 100-degree heat, while covered in flies and slowly dying from parasites. And then maybe appreciate that ancient Egyptians did exactly that, every day, for thousands of years, and they still managed to create one of the most remarkable civilizations in human history. That is the real story of ancient Egypt. Not just the pyramids and the pharaohs, but the millions of ordinary people who lived, worked, suffered, and died to create something extraordinary that we're still trying to understand thousands of years later. Sleep well tonight, and be glad you are sleeping now, not then. Let's talk about what you do for fun, because life isn't all work and death. There is some leisure, some joy, some moments of pleasure that make existence bearable. Music is everywhere. People sing while working. They play instruments like flutes, drums, lyres, and harps. Music accompanies festivals, celebrations, and funerals. If you can play an instrument, you might be hired to perform at wealthy people's parties. The Menat necklace is both jewelry and musical instrument. It is a heavy beaded necklace that rattles when shaken, used in religious ceremonies and dance. Dancing priestesses of Hathor shake Mena, TS, while performing rituals, creating rhythmic sound that is essential to the ceremony. Sistrums are metal rattles sacred to Hathor. They're U-shaped frames with metal rods that jangle when shaken. The sound is believed to ward off evil spirits and please the goddess. You hear sistrums at religious festivals, accompanying songs and dances. Flutes are made from reeds, simple to construct but difficult to play well. Musicians practice for years to master breath control and fingering. Flute music is haunting, perfect for ceremonies and evening entertainment. Drums provide rhythm for work songs, military marches, and celebrations. Simple frame drums are hit with hands. Larger drums are beaten with sticks. The rhythm helps coordinate group labor, making heavy work slightly more bearable. Harps are complex instruments with many strings, played by skilled musicians. Large harps require stands. Smaller harps are held while playing. Harp music entertains the wealthy at banquets, accompanying singers who perform love songs, hymns, and epic tales. Singing is universal. Work songs help pass time during grinding, weaving, or rowing. Religious hymns praise gods. Love songs express desire and longing. Laments mourn the dead. Everyone sings, whether or not they have talent. Dancing happens at festivals and celebrations. Professional dancers entertain at banquets, performing choreographed routines. Common people dance at religious festivals, community celebrations, and just for fun when the opportunity arises. Dance at festivals can be ecstatic, worshippers moving to drums and sistrums, entering trance states where they feel possessed by gods. This isn't entertainment, it is religious experience, communion with divine forces. Professional dancers, often women, train for years. You perform at temples, banquets, and festivals. Your dancing is athletic, graceful, and sometimes erotic. You are valued for your skill, but also viewed with suspicion, because performers occupy ambiguous social space. Acrobatics and gymnastics are performed by trained entertainers. You see acrobats at wealthy people's parties during festivals. And at public celebrations, they flip, tumble, balance, and contort their bodies in ways that amaze audiences. Board games are popular. Senet is the most famous, a game with religious significance that also serves as entertainment. Rich people have elaborate Senet boards made from expensive materials like ivory and ebony. Poor people scratch a board into dirt and use pebbles as pieces. Senet isn't just a game. It represents the soul's journey through the afterlife. Winning symbolizes successful navigation of dangers in the underworld. The game is strategy, luck, and religious metaphor combined. Mehen is another board game, circular in shape like a coiled snake. Players race pieces around the board, and the game might have religious significance, related to the serpent god Mehen, who protects Ra during his nightly journey. Dogs and Jackals is a racing game where pegs are moved around a board shaped like palm trees. It is less symbolically loaded than Senet, more purely entertainment. Children and adults play, betting on outcomes, or just playing for fun. Hunting and fishing are both necessary for food and recreational for the wealthy. Nobles hunt birds in the marshes using throwing sticks, wooden implements that fly like boomerangs. You throw the stick at birds in flight, hoping to hit and retrieve them. Fowling, hunting birds in marshes, is depicted in Tumart as leisure activity. You pole a small boat through reeds, your family accompanying you, hunting waterfowl, while enjoying the relative coolness of the marsh. It is work and pleasure combined. Beer fishing from boats is necessary work for poor fishermen and entertaining sport for nobles. You stand in a boat, watch for fish, and spear them with a multi-pronged fishing spear. Success requires patience, timing, and skill. Hippo hunts are dangerous sport for the wealthy and brave. Hippos are aggressive and deadly, but killing one brings prestige. You hunt from boats, using harpoons, attached to ropes. The wounded hippo tries to escape or attack, creating drama depicted in Tumart. Lion hunts are royal prerogative and extreme sport. The pharaoh hunts lions to demonstrate courage and dominance. Lesser nobles might join these hunts. Common people don't hunt lions because lions will kill you, and you lack resources for such dangerous recreation. Wrestling is popular entertainment and training. Young men wrestle to build strength, skill, and competitive spirit. Competitions happen during festivals, with winners gaining prizes and prestige. Wrestling is depicted extensively in Tumart, showing various moves and holds. Boxing exists but is less formalized than wrestling. You might box for fun or competition, though the rules are unclear. Injuries are common because protective gear doesn't exist. A punch to the face is a punch to the face. No padding involved. Stick fighting combines sport and military training. Men fight with wooden sticks, practicing strikes and defenses. It is violent entertainment that sometimes results in injuries, but builds useful combat skills. Swimming is common, necessary, and recreational. The Nile is your swimming pool, despite crocodiles and parasites. Children learn to swim young. Adults swim for transportation, fishing, and cooling off. Rich people have private pools in their estates, safer than the river. Storytelling is entertainment and education. Tales of gods, heroes, and magical events are told and retold. These stories teach moral lessons, explain natural phenomena, and provide entertainment. Professional storytellers might perform at gatherings. The Tale of Sinuhe is popular literature, copied and read by educated Egyptians. It is an adventure story about an Egyptian who flees to Syria, lives among foreigners, and eventually returns home. The story explores themes of identity, exile, and belonging. The Tale of the Shipwrecked Sailor is another popular story. A sailor survives shipwreck, lands on a magical island inhabited by a giant serpent, and returns with treasure. It is adventure, fantasy, and moral instruction combined. Love poetry is composed and recited. The poems are sensual, describing desire, longing, and physical attraction. Lovers exchange poems or hear them performed. The poetry is surprisingly explicit by modern standards, discussing physical intimacy without euphemism. Drinking is a major pastime. Beer is consumed constantly, and while daily beer is weak, festival beer can be stronger. Getting drunk at celebrations is acceptable and common. Tomb paintings show wealthy people at banquets getting so drunk they vomit, attended by servants. Wine is for the wealthy. Red wine, white wine, flavored wines, all imported or produced domestically from vineyard estates. Wine is consumed at banquets, religious ceremonies, and private celebrations. The rich might drink wine daily. The poor taste it rarely. Beer houses and taverns exist in cities, places where men gather to drink, gamble, and socialize. These establishments have poor reputations as sites of drunkenness and immoral behavior, but they're popular anyway. Gambling happens wherever people gather. Dice games, board games with wagers, betting on sports competitions, all common. You might gamble small amounts you can afford or large amounts you can't, risking debt and poverty for the thrill of winning. Prostitution exists as occupation and entertainment. Both female and male prostitutes serve clients in cities. The profession is stigmatized but tolerated. Prostitutes might work independently or in establishments, serving clients for payment. Brothels exist in cities, though evidence is limited. You pay for sexual services, and the brothel provides location, minimal privacy, and variety of workers. Disease transmission is inevitable, given the lack of hygiene and understanding of sexual health. Sex happens, though it is not openly discussed in most surviving texts. Marriage is common. Monogamy is the norm for most people. Though wealthy men might have multiple wives or concubines, prostitution exists. Affairs happen. Human sexuality doesn't change much across time. Birth control is attempted using various methods. Pessaries made from crocodile dung, honey, and natron are inserted vaginally. Whether this works is questionable, but the acidity might have some spermicidal effect. Mostly women just get pregnant frequently and hope for the best. Aphrodisiacs are used to enhance desire and performance. Lettuce is considered aphrodisiac, which seems odd until you learn that wild lettuce produces a milky sap that Egyptians associated with semen and fertility. Whether eating lettuce actually affects libido is dubious. Mandrake is another reputed aphrodisiac, mentioned in love poetry and depicted in erotic art. The plant's root vaguely resembles human form, leading to beliefs about its magical sexual properties. It is also toxic in large quantities, which limits its use. Festivals are the main break from routine. Religious feast days mean special foods, entertainment, time off work. The festivals of Opet, the Wadi Festival, and others involve processions, music, feasting, and public celebrations that the whole community participates in. The beautiful Festival of the Valley is a major event. The cult statue of Amun crosses the Nile to visit mortuary temples on the West Bank. You participate in processions, visit family tombs, make offerings to the dead, and feast with your family. New Year celebrations mark the Nile's rising, the beginning of a new agricultural cycle. You celebrate the renewal of life, make offerings for prosperity, and participate in public festivities. The festival is joyous, hopeful, and religiously significant. Coronation festivals celebrate the pharaoh's ascension and periodic renewal of power. These are massive state events with processions, sacrifices, distributions of food, and public celebrations. You attend to show loyalty, receive charity, and witness divine power manifest. Royal jubilees celebrate the pharaoh's continued rule. The said festival happens after 30 years of reign, and periodically thereafter. Massive celebrations, temple dedications, public works, all demonstrate the pharaoh's continuing strength and divine favor. Now let's talk about old age, because if you are lucky or stubborn enough to survive to 50 or 60, your experience changes dramatically. Elderly people have earned rest. In theory, you are no longer expected to do heavy labor. You advise, you teach, you manage, but you are not hauling stones or plowing fields. Your children support you, and your wisdom is supposedly valued. In practice, you work as long as you are physically capable. Complete retirement is luxury. Few can afford. You do lighter tasks, contribute what you can, and try not to be burden on your family. Respect for elders is culturally expected. You are supposed to honor your parents, care for them in old age, and listen to their advice. Whether this actually happens depends on individual families and circumstances. Some elderly people maintain authority. If you are mentally sharp, you continue making family decisions, managing property, and commanding respect. Your age is advantage, your experience valuable. Others become dependent and marginalized. If you are senile, incontinent, or unable to communicate, you are burden. Your family cares for you out of obligation, but your quality of life is poor. You sit in the courtyard, ignored, waiting for death. Physical decline is inevitable. Your teeth are ground down or missing, making eating difficult. Your joints are arthritic, making movement painful. Your vision fails, making detailed work impossible. Your hearing deteriorates, making conversation frustrating. Chronic pain is constant companion in old age. Arthritis, old injuries, dental abscesses, digestive problems all contribute to daily suffering. Pain management is limited to whatever herbal remedies and prayers might help. Incontinence is embarrassing and difficult. If you lose control of bladder or bowels, you are dependent on others for cleaning. In a culture without running water or disposable materials, managing incontinence is challenge for entire family. Memory loss and confusion frighten everyone. If you forget family members, wander off, or act irrationally, people believe you are possessed or cursed. There is no understanding of dementia as medical condition. You are spiritually afflicted, and the family suffers. Some elderly people maintain purpose. Grandparents care for children while parents work. Elderly craftsmen teach apprentices. Older priests perform temple duties. Finding role gives life meaning and provides sense of value. Others lose purpose and depression. You are no longer needed, no longer contributing, waiting to die. Without modern understanding of mental health, depression is a spiritual problem requiring religious intervention that doesn't help. Preparation for death becomes primary concern. You ensure burial arrangements are complete, grave goods are ready, and offerings are arranged. You want to die prepared, not caught off guard with inadequate provisions for the afterlife. Dying at home surrounded by family is goal. You lie in your house, family members taking turns sitting with you, saying goodbye. When death comes, they're present to perform immediate rituals, ensuring your soul's safe passage. Death rituals begin immediately after last breath. Family members close your eyes and mouth, preventing spirit from escaping or evil from entering. They wash your body, anoint it with oil, and begin mourning wailing that alerts the community. Professional mourners are hired if family can afford them. These women wail, tear their clothes, throw dust on their heads, and create dramatic displays of grief. Their performance enhances your send-off, showing the community how important you were. The body is prepared for burial quickly, because decomposition is rapid in the heat. If you are wealthy, you are mummified. If you are poor, you are wrapped in linen and buried in the sand. Either way, the burial happens within days of death. Mummification for common people is a simplified version of elaborate royal mummification. Your body cavity is not emptied completely. Organs might be left inside. The drying process is shorter. The wrapping is simpler, but you are preserved enough to give your soul something to return to. The funeral procession to the tomb includes family, friends, hired mourners, and priests. Your wrapped body is placed in a coffin, if you have one, or carried on a bier. Procession includes wailing, offerings, and religious rituals. At the tomb, final rituals are performed. The opening of the mouth ceremony is critical. A priest touches your mummy's mouth with special tools, symbolically restoring your ability to eat, drink, and speak in the afterlife. Without this, you are crippled in eternity. Your family places offerings in the tomb: food, beer, tools, furniture, whatever they can afford. These sustain you in the afterlife until regular offerings establish reliable supply. Rich tombs have elaborate goods. Poor tombs have basic necessities. After burial, your family continues offerings at your tomb. Daily offerings if they're very dutiful, weekly or monthly if they're typical. The offerings maintain your existence in the afterlife. When offerings stop, you die second death and cease to exist. Your name must be remembered. Family members recite your name during offerings. As long as someone remembers and speaks your name, you exist. This is why tomb inscriptions are critical. They preserve your name for eternity, or at least as long as the tomb survives. Tomb robbery threatens eternal existence. Thieves break into tombs, steal valuable grave goods, and sometimes destroy mummies in the process. Your body damaged or destroyed means your soul has nowhere to return. You are finished, erased from existence. Wealthy families employ tomb guards and build elaborate security measures. False passages, hidden chambers, heavy stone doors, all attempt to protect tombs from robbers. It rarely works long term because determined thieves will find a way in. The afterlife itself, the field of reeds, is supposedly perfect Egypt. The Nile floods predictably. Crops grow effortlessly. Work is minimal. Food is abundant. You are reunited with dead family members and live in eternal pleasant existence. But reaching the field of reeds requires successfully navigating the Diwat, the underworld. You must pass through gates, answer questions from guardians, and ultimately face judgment before Osiris. The judgment scene is a critical moment. Your heart is weighed against the feather of Marat, representing truth and justice. If your heart is light, free from sin, you pass into paradise. If it is heavy with wrongdoing, it is devoured by Amit, a demon with crocodile, lion, and hippo features, and you cease to exist. The Book of the Dead contains spells and instructions for navigating the afterlife. Wealthy people commission personalized versions, painted on tomb walls or written on papyrus scrolls. Poor people rely on oral tradition and whatever spells they can afford. The spells in the Book of the Dead address specific challenges: how to pass through gates, what to say to guardians, how to transform into various animals, how to avoid the second death. Knowledge of these spells is essential for afterlife success. Your social status affects your afterlife. Rich people have elaborate tombs, complete grave goods, and regular offerings. Poor people have simple burials, minimal goods, and offerings that might stop after a generation. In death, as in life, wealth determines your experience. But religion promises that rightness of heart matters more than wealth. A poor person who lived justly has better afterlife prospects than a rich person who was cruel and dishonest. Whether this actually worked out in practice is debatable, but the belief provides comfort. Now let's talk about foreign relations and trade, because Egypt doesn't exist in isolation. It is part of a larger world of competing kingdoms, trade networks, and cultural exchange. Nubia to the south provides gold, ivory, ebony, and slaves. Egypt alternates between trading with Nubia and conquering it. Military campaigns extract tribute. Trade expeditions bring back valuable goods. The relationship is exploitative, with Egypt treating Nubia as resource to be plundered. Nubians are darker skinned than most Egyptians, and Egyptian art depicts them with distinctive features. They're sometimes enslaved, sometimes employed as soldiers, sometimes trading partners. Egyptian attitudes toward Nubians mix racism, respect for their wealth, and fear of their military capability. Libya to the west is less centralized, consisting of tribal groups rather than unified kingdom. Libyans raid Egyptian settlements, and Egypt raids back. Libyans are sometimes hired as mercenaries, serving in Egyptian army. The relationship is perpetually unstable. Canaan and Syria to the northeast are sources of timber, particularly cedar from Lebanon. Egypt imports wood for construction, furniture, and boats. Trade is managed through coastal cities and enforced militarily when needed. The Hittite Empire in Anatolia is major rival during the New Kingdom. Egypt and Hittites fight for control of Syria and Canaan. The Battle of Kadesh around 1274 BC is massive engagement resulting in stalemate. Eventually Egypt and Hittites sign peace treaty, one of the first recorded in history. Mesopotamia to the east is distant but connected through trade and diplomatic relations. Assyria, Babylon, and other Mesopotamian powers exchange letters, gifts, and occasionally princesses with Egypt. The relationships are complex, sometimes cooperative, sometimes hostile. Punt, located somewhere on the Red Sea coast, possibly modern Somalia or Yemen, provides myrrh, frankincense, ebony, and exotic animals. Trade expeditions to Punt are major undertakings, requiring ships, crews, and months of travel. Success brings prestigious goods that display Pharaoh's reach. The Mediterranean world connects Egypt to Aegean civilizations. Minoans and later Mycenaeans trade with Egypt. You see foreign pottery, artworks, and people in Egyptian ports. Cultural exchange happens, though Egypt generally considers itself superior to foreign cultures. Foreign gods sometimes are incorporated into Egyptian religion. The Canaanite goddess Anat becomes Egyptian deity. The Asiatic god Reshep is worshipped. Foreign influences are absorbed and Egyptianized, maintaining Egypt's cultural identity while borrowing useful elements. Foreign mercenaries serve in Egyptian army. Nubians, Libyans, even Asiatic soldiers fight for Pharaoh. These foreign troops are valued for specific skills, but also viewed with suspicion. They're useful tools, not trusted. Equals. Trade brings foreign goods and foreign diseases. Ports and border towns see more epidemic disease because of contact with travelers and traders. Cholera, plague, and other infectious diseases enter Egypt through trade routes. Foreign captives become slaves, bringing diverse populations into Egyptian society. These foreign-born slaves speak different languages, worship different gods, and maintain cultural practices. Over generations, they're assimilated or remain as distinct minority communities. Egyptian expatriates live abroad. Merchants, mercenaries, priests, and craftsmen travel to foreign lands, living for months or years away from Egypt. They maintain Egyptian identity while adapting to foreign environments. Diplomatic marriages create connections between Egypt and foreign kingdoms. Pharaohs marry foreign princesses, though Egyptian princesses typically don't marry foreign kings. These marriages establish alliances, secure borders, and create family connections between ruling dynasties. Foreign influence on Egyptian culture is usually subtle. Egypt absorbs useful technologies and ideas while maintaining Egyptian character. The chariot, likely introduced by Hyksos, invaders, becomes Egyptian military tool. Foreign artistic motifs appear in Egyptian art, but are adapted to Egyptian style. The Hyksos invasion during Second Intermediate Period is traumatic cultural memory. Foreign kings rule Lower Egypt for over a century. When Egyptian pharaohs finally expel the Hyksos, the experience reinforces xenophobia and determination to maintain Egyptian sovereignty. Military campaigns to foreign lands are glorified in temple inscriptions. Pharaohs list conquered territories, catalogue tribute received, and describe military victories. These inscriptions serve propaganda purposes, magnifying achievements and minimizing failures. Egyptian soldiers fighting abroad face foreign enemies, foreign diseases, and foreign climates. You might campaign in deserts hotter than Egypt, mountains colder than anything you've experienced, or marshes filled with unfamiliar dangers. If you are conscripted soldier fighting in Syria, you are far from home, eating unfamiliar food, hearing foreign languages, and wondering if you'll ever see Egypt again. Many soldiers don't return. They die in battle, from disease, or abandoned when the army withdraws. Trade caravans crossing deserts face bandits, thirst, and getting lost. Caravan traders are tough, experienced, and well-armed. They make fortunes from successful trips and die miserably from unsuccessful ones. It is dangerous work that few people choose voluntarily. Diplomatic missions to foreign courts require Egyptian officials to travel abroad, present gifts, negotiate treaties, and endure foreign hospitality. You are representing Pharaoh and Egypt, which is honor. But you are also living among foreigners who don't understand Egyptian customs. Let's wrap up this comprehensive nightmare tour with some final thoughts about what we've learned. Ancient Egypt's remarkable achievements came at tremendous human cost. Every monument represents uncounted hours of backbreaking labor. Every beautiful artwork was created by craftsmen, breathing toxic fumes. Every golden treasure was hoarded while common people starved. This doesn't diminish the achievements. Understanding the cost makes them more impressive. Humans built pyramids without modern tools, created sophisticated culture without modern knowledge, and maintained civilization for millennia despite horrific conditions. The people themselves were no different from us. They felt pain, fear, love, and hope just like modern humans. They weren't tougher or more resilient. They simply had no choice but to endure, because alternatives didn't exist. What they did have was different expectations. They didn't know life could be better, because they'd never seen better. Their baseline for acceptable living conditions was survival, and anything beyond that was luxury. This makes their cultural achievements even more remarkable. They created art, music, literature, and philosophy, while struggling with parasites, heat, and hunger. They built civilization not because it was easy, but because they had the stubborn determination to create meaning from suffering. Modern people benefit from thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and technology. We have clean water, antibiotics, climate control, and food security that ancient Egyptians couldn't imagine. Our advantages don't make us superior. They make us fortunate. So tonight, when you go to sleep in your comfortable bed, in your safe home, with your long life expectancy and modern conveniences, remember the millions of ancient Egyptians who lived, worked, suffered, and died to create the civilization we still study today. Remember Neferet grinding grain until her knees gave out. Remember Kamwasit dying slowly from parasites he couldn't see. Remember Penib cutting stone until his lungs failed. Remember all the unnamed millions whose lives were hard, painful, and short. And then be grateful. Grateful for antibiotics, air conditioning, clean water, and the accumulated knowledge that makes modern life possible. Grateful that you are living now, not then. Sleep well tonight, and be very, very glad you are sleeping now. Not then. Music is everywhere. People sing while working. They play instruments like flutes, drums, lyres, and harps. Music accompanies festivals, celebrations, and funerals. If you can play an instrument, you might be hired to perform at wealthy people's parties. Dancing happens at festivals and celebrations. Professional dancers entertain at banquets. Common people dance at religious festivals, community celebrations, and just for fun when the opportunity arises. Board games are popular. Senet is the most famous, a game with religious significance that also serves as entertainment. Rich people have elaborate Senet boards made from expensive materials. Poor people scratch a board into dirt and use pebbles as pieces. Hunting and fishing are both necessary for food and recreational for the wealthy. Nobles hunt birds in the marshes using throwing sticks. They spear fish from boats. These activities are depicted in tomb art as leisure pursuits, though for poor people they're just work. Drinking is a major pastime. Beer is consumed constantly, and while daily beer is weak, festival beer can be stronger. Getting drunk at celebrations is acceptable and common. Tomb paintings show wealthy people at banquets getting so drunk they vomit. attended by servants. Sex happens, though it is not openly discussed in most surviving texts. Marriage is common. Monogamy is the norm for most people, though wealthy men might have multiple wives or concubines. Prostitution exists. Affairs happen. Human sexuality doesn't change much across time. Birth control is attempted using various methods. Pessaries made from crocodile dung, honey, and natron are inserted vaginally. Whether this works is questionable, but the acidity might have some spermicidal effect. Mostly women just get pregnant frequently and hope for the best. Festivals are the main break from routine. Religious feast days mean special foods, entertainment, time off work. The festivals of Opit, the Wadi Festival, and others involve processions, music, feasting, and public celebrations that the whole community participates in. Storytelling is entertainment and education. Tales of gods, heroes, and magical events are told and retold. These stories teach moral lessons, explain natural phenomena, and provide entertainment. Professional storytellers might perform at gatherings. So life in ancient Egypt is work, heat, disease, early death, and brief moments of joy squeezed between the suffering. You are born into a rigid social system that determines your entire life. You work until your body breaks. You watch your children die. You pray to gods who might or might not care. And then you die, hopefully with enough saved for a decent burial. And you hope the afterlife is better than this life was. The pyramids are impressive. The art is beautiful. The civilization is remarkable. But living in it, being the person who cuts the stone, who hauls the blocks, who farms the grain to feed the workers, that is not impressive. That is just hard, painful, and short. Imagine complaining about your commute or your air conditioning being too cold after learning about daily life in a civilization where the temperature is 100 degrees Fahrenheit by mid-morning. You are drinking parasitic water, and your bread is slowly grinding your teeth into dust. We romanticize ancient Egypt because we see the monuments and the art and the golden treasures in museums. We don't see the sweat, the pain, the early graves, the children who didn't make it, the women who died giving birth, the men who were crushed building monuments to pharaohs who barely knew they existed. The Egyptians themselves thought their lives were good, or at least acceptable, because they didn't know alternatives. They believed their suffering had purpose, that their labor honored the gods, that their deaths would lead to eternal life if they followed the proper rituals. Whether they were right is between them and the gods they served. But from a modern perspective, ancient Egypt looks less like a golden age and more like a civilization built on grinding human suffering, environmental hostility, and the acceptance that life is hard, and then you die and hopefully the afterlife is better. And yet they built wonders that last millennia. They created art that still moves us. They developed mathematics, medicine, and engineering. They wrote stories that are still read today. They didn't just survive, they created. And what they created outlasted them by thousands of years. So maybe the lesson isn't that ancient Egypt was a nightmare, though it absolutely was by modern standards. Maybe the lesson is that humans can endure incredible hardship and still create beauty, meaning, and legacy. That even in the heat, the hunger, the disease, and the pain, people loved each other, raised children, told stories, and built things that would last forever. Or maybe the lesson is just that air conditioning is wonderful and modern medicine is miraculous. And we should be grateful every single day that we don't have to drink from the Nile, grind grain by hand, or worry about scorpions in our hair while we sleep. Both lessons are valid. Ancient Egypt was simultaneously an impressive civilization and a terrible place to live. Those aren't contradictory. They're just two different perspectives on the same complex reality. So tonight, when you go to sleep in your climate-controlled room, in your comfortable bed, with your clean water and your dental care and your life expectancy of 75+ years, take a moment to appreciate that you are not waking up at dawn to work in 100-degree heat while covered in flies and slowly dying from parasites. And then maybe appreciate that ancient Egyptians did exactly that every day for thousands of years, and they still managed to create one of the most remarkable civilizations in human history. That is the real story of ancient Egypt. Not just the pyramids and the pharaohs, but the millions of ordinary people who lived, worked, suffered, and died to create something extraordinary that we're still trying to understand thousands of years later. Sleep well tonight, and be glad you are sleeping. Now, not then.